6 p.m. This is a regular meeting for Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. I hear a big echo. Do all of you out there hear an echo too? No? Okay.
Here's Earl.
Are they doing something? I don't know. What about the assembly people? Do you hear an echo up here? Okay, they'll tweak it for us, so bear with us, please.
Goes up here on the diet.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
I will. Tim Hale.
Here.
Stephanie Nowers. Here. Dee McKee. Here. Robert Yunt.
Here.
Moki Tu. Here. Jesse Sumner.
Here.
And I am expecting Ron Bernier at some point, Madam Mayor. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anything the members would like to pull from the consent agenda? Yes, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pull Resolution 22-044 and place it in the introductions for public hearing on the 17th. That's my resolution. I thought I was scheduling it for a public hearing tonight, but since it's on the consent agenda, I'd like to just move it to introductions for the 17th.
Point of clarification, Madam Mayor, is that to be introduced on the 17th, or is that to be introduced today for the 17th?
Introduced tonight to be heard on the 17th.
Okay, you have that, Madam Clerk?
Is there any objections?
Is there any objections? Anything else to be pulled from the consent agenda? Anyone else? Yes.
I'm sorry, I just stepped out and I didn't see which one had been pulled. Are we pulling
Okay,
from consent agenda now?
Either the clerk or Assemblyperson Hale, would you restate it for Assemblyperson McKee, please?
Absolutely. I'm pulling my resolution 22-044 and placing it for introduction tonight for public hearing on the 17th.
Yeah, okay. I'd like to pull 22045, 22051. And the reason I'm pulling these is just I kind of want a little bit more discussion on them. 22035 and 22041. Yeah.
Okay, Madam Clerk, did you get all of that? Okay. 2241, I think, was the last one. Assemblyperson Nowers, right? Correct, Madam
We
Clerk?
can't hear anything.
Sorry. What? I'm sorry.
Assemblyperson Nowers had a question regarding the last one. Didn't you? Oh, I thought you asked what the last one was. Okay, sorry.
Could we just repeat which ones were pulled?
Resolution 22044 was put under introductions. Resolution 22045, Resolution 22051, and AM 22035 and AM 22041.
Thank you. Any questions, comments regarding, everybody have those now? Is there anything else that anyone else would like to pull from the consent? Yeah.
Not necessarily from the consent agenda, but I was thinking that maybe we should move Ordinance 22-056 to the top of the public hearings tonight. That's the one I think that most folks are here for. This would make it so they didn't have to sit through a whole long, boring meeting before they get to give us a piece of their mind.
Okay. Is there a Deputy Mayor?
We got a little bit of an echo. I couldn't hear what that was. What are we doing?
I was suggesting taking the land transfer to the shooting, the kids shooting, and putting it at the very beginning of the public hearings rather than at the very end of the public hearings.
Is there any objection? down there fixing the mic, so we'll wait.
We're getting a really bad echo on this end from some of these extra speakers. Are you guys getting an echo down there?
Yeah, that's about the only. That's when we can hear you, because otherwise we can't.
What do you want?
The echo we get.
I'm just unplugging the microphones have a speaker on them.
Unplug the old ones? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I'm trying to see if that will work.
Oh, okay. Bear with us, please. We're doing some major renovations here.
We're just seeing if this works. We're not guaranteeing anything.
Does that help? Maybe haven't got them all yet.
I don't know if it will, but
The attorney is sticking his in his jacket. That's what we're laughing at.
Testing, testing. Is that better? Okay.
Can we have Rob talk for a second to see if we can actually hear him?
You can never hear me, can you? All right.
Okay. So let me back up just a minute, I think, because I don't know for sure if I heard if there was objections to moving the public hearing 22-056 to the beginning of the public hearing. Is there objections to making that move on the agenda? Okay, if not, then that's will be the first item we'll take up under public hearings. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, then the agenda is approved as presented and changed. Okay. Okay, we all stand, please, for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on our agenda is minutes of preceding meetings, and we do not have anything presented. The next item is agency reports. Do we have a report from any of the three cities? Don't see anybody out there. Do we have a report from the school district? Okay. Do we have a report from the state? Mr. Todd, thank you.
Oh, that's right. Green means go now. Todd Smolden, the Matsu Office of the Governor. Just thank you for some time here. I won't be too long. I did want to let everybody know about the press conference that we had today regarding fentanyl. Madam Mayor, thank you for attending that. And I think it's really important that everybody understand what we're dealing with fentanyl. And it's actually great to see a lot of young people in the room here today because, you know, the issue with fentanyl is that people are really playing Russian roulette when they are consuming illegal substances and even things that look like normal prescription drugs. So it's very difficult to tell counterfeit drugs from prescription drugs. And they have amounts of fentanyl in them. And depending on who is producing those illegal counterfeit drugs, you can have some drugs that have way too much in terms of the amount. And it's immediately deadly. And I had a conversation with my foster children about this when we had that a number of deaths in the Mat-Su a couple weeks ago. And what I said to them was, I said, if you have, if you had 100 Skittles in a bowl and one of them would kill you, would you put your hand in there and grab a Skittle? And of course they said no, but that's really what people are doing, is they're taking a risk with their lives because of this fentanyl. The governor has joined with 25 other governors to, along with attorney generals, to try to put more pressure on the Biden administration to do something about this. The reality is that this is coming from China. It's being manufactured in Mexico, and there's a significant amount of this fentanyl that's coming through the southern border. And so we're requesting that President Biden take a more active approach to stopping this at the source. But that's the supply side. There's also a demand side, and we're responsible for that. When I say we, I mean we as a community. We're the consumers of this. And so we put out an action bulletin today through the Department of Health, and I shared that with the borough communications team. But I would encourage you to maybe highlight or put that out in your communications. And we're also working with the school district to make sure that that's going out with the school district. So in addition to that, the governor is asking the legislature to increase the penalty for drug dealing, drug selling. So we're looking at hopefully the legislature will take a look at that. Also working again with more prosecutors and the troopers and other law enforcement to try to catch as much of this as we can. But it really is up to us as a community to be on the lookout for this, for these things. I'm sure some of you would like me to tell you everything that the governor is vetoing and funding tonight, but I can't do that because I don't even know. But what I can say is that, the governor put school bond debt reimbursement in his budget for a reason. And that's because we have the revenue for it right now. And he does not want to see an increase in burden on local taxpayers during this difficult time with coming out of COVID and everything else. So I think, if you look at what the governor proposed, he still supports the things that he put in his budget. The House has grown the budget by about $1.5 billion, and I can't say that he supports everything that they've done, but the Senate is working on it right now, and we hear that they will be probably finished on time this year. So that's good news. Might be because it's an election year. I don't know. But that's all I have for tonight. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them. I'm happy to do so.
Question/comment. So thank you for taking up the fentanyl thing. We have seen that. And I know you guys have been working on it for a while, but it's been rough on our community as the years have went past, and others as well. But you could speak to some of the other crime statistics from the last 3.5 years. My understanding is that, when the governor came in and we changed some things around, we're now down at around historical lows on most crime rates. Is that the truth?
Yes, to Assembly Member Yount, through the mayor, the governor has increased funding for law enforcement, corrections, and prosecutors every year that he's been in office. And I think we're seeing the results of that. And also because the legislature essentially repealed SB 91. There are some things that did not get repealed, but the governor's leadership in the legislature, that has also helped. We are now at 0 domestic violent sexual assault kits. And the state of Alaska historically for years was backlogged on those. So again, thanks to the legislature and funding, we've been able to catch those up, which ultimately means we're catching perpetrators of heinous crimes, and we're helping victims to have some closure on some of those things. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, and I just let everybody know that we down there, we really appreciate it. So thanks.
Yes, Assemblyperson Bernier, go ahead.
Is it a possibility that Palmer could get another prosecutor? It would help things out greatly here.
Yeah, to Assemblymember Bernier through the mayor, it's not that the funding isn't there. It is often difficult to find staff for those positions. So, but I'd have to look, when I talked to Chief Prosecutor a year ago or so, he was actively looking. He actually had a position that he was looking to fill and was not able to fill it. So I'm not sure if it is the funding or more of an issue of being able to fill it with qualified staff, but I'd be happy to look into that for you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions of Todd? Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
Is there a joint Assembly School Board Committee on school issues? Oh. Oh, you're right, I jumped that, sorry about that. I think, do we have a report from the library board? My apologies, I'm sorry.
It's not necessarily one of the highlights of my day, but it is ending it properly. And forgive my little, I'm kind of getting congested because my name is Marcy Hawkins. I am the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Library Board member of Sutton. So for you who live out in Sutton, know that the wind is now going out there, bringing up the glacial dust and making it so nice to breathe. So I am not Diane. She cannot be here tonight, so I am appointed dual member to present our presentation, and we will try to make it short, sweet, to the point. And do I have slides? No? Did you get a packet with slides in it?
They're in the Assemblies packet. We didn't realize you guys wanted them on the screen also. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, as you may know, we have 7 wonderful libraries in our Matanuska-Susitna Borough. 2 of them are city libraries, Wasilla and Palmer. And then we just had Willow open up. Yay. And we have Talkeetna, Sutton, where I'm at, and of course, Big Lake. We also have Trapper Creek, and I'll put a 2-second plug in. Trapper Creek is the first little building here. They share their tiny space with the EMS. And let me tell you, that place is crowded, but they do wonderful things. So I encourage each and every one of you to please visit your libraries. And with that,
I'm trying to get it to rotate.
hey, modern technology.
There we go. You'll just have to tell me when to scroll.
All righty.
Sorry to make it inconvenient.
Well, the first little bitty brown building is the Trapper Creek Library. They share their space with the EMS. And needless to say, both areas are somewhat crowded because it is a little building. So hopefully something will be done, make it bigger, because they have a lot of people who come in for Wi-Fi, and especially with our wonderful tourist season coming up, they will get even more busier because they're just right off the road. And of course, the next one there is Willow. And then of course we have my favorite, Sutton. We have Big Lake, and they're starting to need some more room. And of course, I'm proud to say Wasilla, which I stood on the corner and held my sign saying, please vote to help pay for Wasilla. And then of course we have Palmer. as you know when you go out. And last but certainly not least, we have Talkeetna, which the library itself is beautiful, but the trails behind it is really beautiful. Though be cautionary because this is mosquito season now. So as we all try to return to normal from our almost 2 years, I think, of the pandemic, we would like to remind you how important these libraries have been to our community. I can only say personally that if it wasn't for my library during the pandemic, I'd be even more crazier than I probably am. But when you visit each of our libraries, you're going to be visiting a community unto itself. Because while they all have certain aspects, they all have also a unique, diverse community. So with that in mind, they are drivers, they are economic engines, and they put forth a lot of a business attraction. Often our libraries are the gathering places for an emergency. Like earlier this year, I'm sure we all enjoyed the high wind, the wind whipping through, knocking out our power, and making things difficult. And a lot of our libraries opened up to help people who needed to charge their cell phones or get warm. And that certainly unto itself is a wonderful thing. You should have an article in your packet that was written by Kelly Jensen. It's dated February 9th, 2022. And in it, she writes that libraries are not dying, but they are changing, or as we can all say, evolving, because we've all had to do things differently in some respects after our pandemic. And her article was written before the pandemic. So we can say that ebooks, videos, physical and digital audios are roughly 60% of our libraries. But as you know, with further libraries are filling significant technology in our communities. They have computers, people can get on, file their PFDs, taxes, all right, play video games. But roughly 60% is many of the library collections. And further information in that article states libraries are filling significant technology needed in our communities. So our library staff, and I can't praise them enough, are our most valuable components. They are wonderful, caring, and I know I'm going out of order, but they definitely are very knowledgeable and very needed people. You don't know how hard it is to try and get someone to learn a computer. So you have to have someone come over and help them. And the librarians are very good at finding ways to solve their problems. They also help me sometimes when I can't find a book. And in the children's section, it could be difficult. So with this, we also have, next slide. We also have, with our staff, our valued components and a review, mission statements. Sorry, that's okay. That one.
Okay, going back.
I hate scripts. The review of our mission statements. As I was saying earlier, each library is bound by certain components. And these are some of the components here, with the support of love of reading, personal growth, and lifelong learning. They have to have certain key things in place. And this also includes teaching people how to read, providing programs for children. And I do a whole lot better when I read on Facebook during story time, when our librarian is not available, if you want to check that out. And of course, helping their community build, change lives, and grow. In addition, during the past 2 years, when our physical buildings were closed, our librarians and staff provided services such as online story time, book club and technology, science, the STEM program, and the staff provided grab-and-go craft and STEM kits, and they even had, at some point, snack time. They would hand out snacks. Our libraries are envisioning continuing online programs in conjunction with in-person programming. Fourth slide. In conclusion, our library facilities are very important, and we would like to thank you so much for your past support, and we look forward, of course, to having your support continuing. And if for some reason anyone wonders why in the world we have to talk about libraries, we can always point to Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Carnegie, who after he passed away donated about $60 million to over 1,500 public libraries. I read that. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for having me. And if I can answer questions, I will be more than happy to.
Assemblyperson Mallard?
I just wanted to say thank you for coming down. It may not have been a highlight of your night to come down here and spend here instead of at home, but I think libraries are a highlight of an asset in our community. And it is amazing to me for somebody who grew up on a card catalog and, you know, watched the computer come along and everybody talk about how libraries were going to become irrelevant, to see that they are not at all, and they're just such a great resource in our community. So thank you for coming down and taking the time.
Thank you so much. I should probably point out, everyone, you know, libraries, if you go and figure out how to do the app, and I had to ask the librarian, there's an app you can put on your phone. You can look up what you want. You can look up for an ebook. You can look up to have a book put on hold, or a movie, which is how I got to see the last one that was sent from Juneau. So we have interlibrary exchange program, which is a wonderful thing in this state where we are so spread out. So if the only book that I want is in Trapper Creek, they can send it down, and they have ways of doing that. But there is an app that you can get that I haven't even begun to explore. And it would be, with our age of technology, I think that's something that everyone could look at.
Yes, Assemblyperson McKee?
Yeah, I had a question about your teaching reading. Is that a formal program? Do you have certified teachers? And the only reason I ask, I am a teacher. I think it's an amazing thing. I hope you really are doing it.
No, well, one of the things, of course, we do is we read books, which generally it's like our preschool learning, day learning. Families come in there. Some of the programs are in other of the libraries. We have online reading. I met the professor the other day that came in and did the STEM, you know, to encourage people to read, encourage families, you know, to ask questions. Gosh, what's some of the other things? We have an after-school program in Sutton, and I think we have one all throughout the 7 libraries. And of course, summer reading is coming. But as a preschool teacher, I once in a while get drafted when I have time to come in and play with my puppets.
So it's more a program encouraging reading and making reading fun and exciting than
Yes.
actually doing the phonics and all
Yeah,
that kind
because
of stuff.
if you're not happy looking at a book,
Yeah.
why read it? You want to be excited about what, you know, you're looking at, even if it's just a picture book. And some of the books they have these days, and I should probably stop because I'll get going.
Teachers do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there anything else?
No, I guess not. Thank
And
you.
of course, we all have our little buttons that say, I love my library. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Ready. The next item on the agenda is our joint Assembly School Board Committee on School Issues Update. I think we've had a meeting, have we? No, okay. Are there any of the public relations reports that anybody would like to highlight or say anything about? Okay. Mr. Brown, you have a report for us, sir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, the last library report's a good segue into my first comment. It is National Teacher Appreciation Day, so we'll just take a moment and recognize that. We do have a teacher on the dais up here, so we honor and appreciate our educators across the valley for their commitment and their sacrifice. So just a good way to get things started tonight. So I'm going to then transition to a Port Mckenzie update. In Resolution 22020, the Assembly directed administration to engage with the municipality of Anchorage to explore the formation or potential formation of a regional port authority and to explore the formation of an economic development zone for Port Mckenzie, including any changes to state law or borough code, and provide periodic updates to the Assembly. This is an update to the direction provided in that resolution. So I'm going to begin and talk a little bit about this idea of crossroads. And really, for context, both ports, and when I say ports, I'm talking Port Mckenzie here in the borough and the port, what I will refer to as the Port of Anchorage, just for clarity, are both at a crossroad of sorts. Port Mckenzie was conceived as a bulk commodity export port, which has had minimal business activity or private investment for many years. We have limited cargo handling capabilities, such as cranes or roll-on, roll-off capabilities, and have limited intermodal connectivity. Millions of dollars have already been invested into the Port Mckenzie Rail Extension Project, and I want to be clear, when I say millions of dollars invested, I'm talking about from the state of Alaska. The borough has not put any cash into the Port Mckenzie Rail Extension Project in an attempt to link the port with the railroad main line along the Parks Highway. The rail extension is approximately 50% completed, with embankment and bridges constructed for all but one segment. The remaining cost for completion is estimated at $190 million. So why is Port Mckenzie at a crossroads? Well, the U.S. Economic Development Administration, or EDA, awarded a $7.6 million grant to the borough to fund infrastructure improvements designed to increase the operating efficiency of the port. The EDA grant is to be matched with $1.9 million in local investment and is expected to stimulate economic activity and spur private investment. This investment would install pile sleeves on the existing deep draft dock to increase its useful life and support the addition of a roll-on, roll-off cargo dock to increase the port's efficiency. Expending this federal grant funding would entail an obligation to maintain the new infrastructure for its quote-unquote useful life, which we expect to be approximately 15 years. So the point being there is, as we obligate that funding and move forward with constructing, roll-on, roll-off or pile sleeves, we are going to pick up some hooks from the federal government for using that funding. On the other hand, the Port of Anchorage is also at a crossroads, as they have aging docks, the need for newer modern power systems, and a modernization program currently estimated to cost $1.8 billion. I believe the municipality of Anchorage is seeking $600 million from the state legislature to support the more immediate needs of this modernization program. So as far as governance, I'm going to shift there because the part of the Assembly's task in that reso was to explore a couple of different governance options. So the borough mayor, borough manager, and port operations manager met with the municipality of Anchorage administration to discuss the potential of a regional port authority. The Muni was clear that they did not desire to concede any control of the Port of Anchorage, nor did they see any value in having a port on the other side of the Kinnick Arm. The Muni believes that the Uppercook Inlet marine cargo market is too small to economically support additional docks, and that Alaska cannot economically afford this sort of port redundancy. Their solution is to fund and execute the Port of Alaska modernization program, which is the $1.8 billion that I referred to a moment ago. The Muni, in turn, has proposed a partnership, or we'll refer to it as an alliance, between the borough and the Muni involving the port locations, but not related to general port operations. That alliance is titled the Uppercook Inlet Marine Energy Alliance. The concept is to partner to leverage public and private investment to develop a microgrid within the borough's port district. The microgrid would provide economic renewable power to the Port of Anchorage while also potentially providing the same to activities within our port district. The Muni has indicated they have access to funding from the U.S. Department of Energy to explore this model's feasibility. This structure would involve working together on mutually beneficial initiatives while retaining autonomy for both municipalities. So it is an agreement, but it does not preclude either municipality or port from executing priorities as its elected bodies see fit. So I'm going to shift gears to the economic development zone. So borough staff are currently exploring ways to create the conditions to incentivize private investment in the port and port district. 2 members of our state delegation have expressed interest in proposing state legislation that, if adopted, would create a state corporate tax exemption for a period of 10 to 15 years for the port district in an attempt to incentivize private investment. Additionally, the borough may propose local tax breaks and tariff and lease rates that also encourage private investment with the intent to stimulate economic activity as opposed to a revenue stream for the borough. So I want to be clear on that because you're going to see where that comes into play here in just a moment. So I want to introduce this new idea tonight, and I would like to propose a public-private partnership that involves a company who has the use for a port to essentially run our port operations and conduct business development. We are currently having discussions with a company that is interested in this concept, and we have exchanged information for analysis. If discussions continue to advance, I believe we could have a partnership for assembly consideration in the August or September timeframe of this year. We need to dive down on more specifics. However, we would be looking for input on how to leverage the EDA grant funding that I spoke of earlier, as well as additional grant opportunities currently being reviewed to invest in infrastructure that would lead to the best development over time. So if I were to summarize that very quickly, I would say it this way. We essentially would be, to some degree, would be turning over port operations and port business development to a private company that's in partnership with the borough. There are some real benefits to maintaining a municipality ownership of a port because we have access to grant opportunities for infrastructure development that a private company would not necessarily have, but we would choose to work with them to develop a model that would generate economic activity. It may not stimulate a lot of revenue for the borough up front, but it would generate economic activity that should lead to growth and jobs. I want to cover real quick key port infrastructure and talk about kind of where we are at a very high level just for a moment. As it stands, we have EDA grant funding to preserve the deep draft dock piles. Sounds like fish passage for the clerk. And develop a roll-on, roll-off ramp capability. We also have repairs planned and funded for existing needs over the next 3 to 5 years. We're working to divest of the port conveyor system as it is inoperable and requires significant repairs estimated at well over $500,000. At this point, since advertising, we have received limited responses, but we're continuing to look at those opportunities to ensure that this system does not become another liability. Wood chips have not proven to be a viable export, and we're currently working to have an engineering firm assess the condition of the deep draft dock piles related to the EDA grant so we have a better sense for how to proceed and still preserve the opportunity to develop a roll-on, roll-off ramp capability. This assessment should be completed later this summer, and I believe one of the gentlemen from the engineering firm is in the room tonight. So to summarize, where do we go from here, or what I would recommend to the Assembly as far as how we proceed? I would recommend we continue to work with the Muni on a marine energy alliance not related to general port operations and explore the microgrid feasibility. I am not an engineer. I do not know renewable power enough to make a comment on how feasible that could actually be. But if the Muni is willing to seek some federal funding through the U.S. Department of Energy and conduct a feasibility assessment or a study, I believe it's worth partnering with them because it could be mutually beneficial. The second point, continue to work toward divesting of the port conveyor system. I mentioned that it's currently listed for sale through our bonfire portal. At this time, we've had over 30 interested parties view the documents. We've had one interested bidder visit the site, and another submitted questions related to the removal requirements. The current opportunity is open through June 9th of this year. Third, we continue to work with our state delegation to develop potential state tax breaks for the Port District. That doesn't mean that we're going to have something in short order, but I think it is feasible that you could potentially have something in the next year or two, or at least within the next couple of years, that could create, at least at the state level, some potential corporate tax breaks related to development in the Port District. Number 4, continue to develop ongoing operations such as the horizontal fuels tank farm that we've been working on, as well as the company that currently imports cement through Port Mckenzie. As a matter of fact, the deep draft vessel is currently expected in mid-May for another cement delivery. 5th, continue to pursue grant opportunities specifically for a mobile harbor crane. I mentioned earlier that we have limited cargo handling capabilities, and the roll-on, roll-off ramp that the scope is already included in the existing EDA grant to improve those capabilities. We would look to this company that we're having conversations with to inform how that should be developed so that we can determine what would be the best use and what type of equipment and or ramp we might want to have at the port to improve our odds of stimulating economic activity. And lastly, complete the public-private partnership for port operations and business development. Leverage, as I mentioned earlier, the capacity of a municipality for grant funding for infrastructure development while turning business development over to the private sector with experience in marine operations and with a direct benefit to growth in port operations. So that's my report this evening and an update on what we're doing with regards to the direction the Assembly provided administration. And I'll kind of pause to see if there are any questions or comments.
Assembly person hours.
Thank you. You know, I'm really excited to hear that we're trying to pursue multiple options. I think the goal since I got in the Assembly is see some money come into that port, whatever way it is, and see it be productive. Had a question when we're looking at encouraging business. I had 2 questions. One is encouraging business development out there. You mentioned local tax breaks, and I wondered if that's just would be property taxes or something else. And then the other question is, if we're looking at incentivizing development out there as part of those discussions, are we also looking at what resources companies might need out there? I think the power is somewhat limited. I don't believe they have 3-phase power, maybe all the way out there, sewer and water, gas line. Is that part of the discussions of what things could incentivize actual business development out, or what businesses might need to develop out there?
So through the mayor to Ms. Nowers, yes, I think the tax breaks, if you talk about property tax breaks, there are some limitations. That's one of our highest bill rate areas. There's a very limited tax base out there. So there are some real limitations with regards to property tax breaks. But if you find a company who can leverage the port for its own business, and we can offer tariff breaks and other things, there are ways to incentivize folks outside of just property tax breaks. So I think those are the things we're kind of looking for feedback from the company we've had discussions with to see what they find is viable. Because I mean, we see the value in it for us from an economic development perspective. We have to determine, and they kind of have to share that with us, what's the benefit for them so that this becomes mutually beneficial. And we've had those initial conversations. That's kind of what we're working through now, is to determine how could we put something into an agreement that we could actually bring forward for consideration. And to your second point around energy, absolutely. We've talked about, and we had already identified the importance of affordable energy at the port. I think that's potentially one of the benefits of developing a microgrid out there. We don't have natural gas at the port. So if you really wanted to heat a facility, if you wanted to develop warehousing or something like that, it's going to be very difficult to do that. Fortunately, the cement manufacturer that or the company that's importing cement, it's not a huge thing to have heated facilities year round. So that is a challenge for us. There's limited power. We are also aware of other discussions that companies are having with regards to renewable investment in the Point Mckenzie area, not necessarily within the Port District, that could also be beneficial. I think one of the Assembly's priorities for infrastructure development, if I recall the state legislative priorities correctly, was we had identified the cost and talked to Instar about what it would actually take to extend natural gas service to the Port District. So we have a price tag for that. So we kind of know what some of those things are. The question is, how do we get there in terms of making that investment? So I think that's one of the benefits of it being municipal owned at this point. Is a private company takes over the port and they actually owned it, they're not going to be able to leverage any public funding for infrastructure development.
Yes, Assemblyperson McKee.
It kind of sounds like we are changing the direction and the personality, basically, of the port after 30-some years. Am I hearing that we are heading in a different direction? We're not going to blow the thing up, but we're kind of reining it in a little bit to not be such a far-reaching Yahoo kind of port in competition with Anchorage, but develop an economic zone to the renewable resource energy thing. And that, is that right?
Go ahead, sir.
Through the mayor to Ms. McKee, I think that's fair. I mean, as I mentioned, this was developed, the port was developed as a bulk commodity export port. None of what I just described precludes that. Like if somebody comes in and says, we want to put in some facility and it becomes an anchor tenant, and none of what I just described precludes any of that from happening.
Yeah.
But the problem is we've been sitting around for a couple of decades waiting for that to happen. And I think if I were to use a baseball analogy, I think we're going after base hits instead of home runs.
Good idea.
So we're not swinging for the fence. It doesn't mean that if they lob one across the plate, we're not going to take a shot. It just means that there are other ways to grow the port and port operations that may not generate tons of revenue. I don't know, when you kind of look back at it, that the Assembly ever really said, I think there were conversations around developing a revenue stream for the borough to lower property taxes. But I think in the end, what folks are really interested in is economic development and jobs and things like that. And there are ways to stimulate some of that doesn't necessarily create some, remarkable revenue stream for the borough. And the company that we've talked to has some interesting ideas. And there are some models around the state for how to do some of that growth. We just have to find out how do we partner and leverage their expertise and the fact that they're a private company and are they're much better postured to run a port than we are. I think that's just the reality, and that's not a hit on staff or anything. I think Mr. Sumner made a comment several weeks ago and he said, I'm not sure why the government should be running the port. And I think there's some argument for that. And what we want to see is, can we pair the two together and see if there's an opportunity there?
And then just one more question, if I can. The grant that we got that had like close to $2 million in borough matching funds, we haven't touched that yet. Am I right?
Through the mayor to Ms. McKee, I believe that's correct. We are going to start tapping into that as we award a design contract. We need to reach out to an engineering firm to do the assessment, because what we don't now, we have 64 deep draft dock piles. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to put sleeves on all 64, or that it has to run the entire range of the height of the pile itself. We need to go out and do an assessment and figure out what's the best way to leverage the limited funding that we have. Because what I'm really interested in, to be perfectly honest, is not to overshoot on that and not have the ability to develop a roll-on, roll-off ramp. That roll-on, roll-off ramp is probably fundamental to base hits, frankly, because it opens up the port to completely different opportunities that will not exist if we don't have the ability to take barges and other ships out of the water.
Thank you. I'm encouraged.
Assemblyperson Yount.
Thanks for the update, Mike. I got a couple of comments, no questions. I want to discuss a timeline. So the city of Anchorage was founded in 1914. In 1961, their port was built. In 1964, there was this little earthquake in Anchorage. If that earthquake had happened prior to that port construction, it's a good chance they would have been looking across the water then, right? when the military engineers, it was the United States military that had engineers up here doing all their studies back in the years that Anchorage was born. You're 80, 100 years ago, they just didn't have the technology we have now. They had no idea that they were going to have to dredge that port forever. There's been years that it frozen completely. You couldn't get barges in or out. It hasn't happened in a while, but it could happen again. Not having our port is a huge negative for the whole state of Alaska. The future of Alaska is going to be through our port. I promise you. Economic development's huge. I definitely agree. I way more than think it's a good idea to look at a private partnership. I've been working really hard to get one of our large lumber suppliers in the state of Alaska here and start bringing us a couple barges a year. And not having that railroad dock is what cost us that. If we had that dock, we could have put that contract to bed. So I'm excited about the EDA grant. I'm excited about the potential to get that dock. And I do firmly believe in the future of our port. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, so through the mayor to the assembly, one of the things, there is a sense of urgency here. So one of the things we, talking about this idea of being at a crossroads is we want to have something on the table that the assembly has had an opportunity to evaluate and say, yes, it is worth us taking this EDA funding from the federal government and the hooks associated with that before we start significantly spending that grant. So that's why we're trying to develop these things this summer. The assessment by the engineering firm followed up with a discussion and a potential agreement with a private company with some actual concepts to what could be developed. The challenge is we can't answer exactly how that $7.6 million could be allocated until we know, because it makes sense for us to go in and preserve the piles that we have in there and put sleeves on them, but to what degree and how much is that going to cost us? So we have the company that we talked to, we offered for them to participate in the assessment. We've been open books about where we are, and they're well aware of that. And I think in a couple of months, we could bring something back that would give you something to chew on tangibly as we figure out how do we navigate the existing grant and future grant opportunities that we may choose to pursue.
Assemblyperson Yount, go ahead.
Yeah, one more comment is local representative Kevin McCabe. It's his first term, but I'm pretty confident Kevin knows more about this port than anybody in Juneau, and he has been fighting very hard for us to have a seat at the table in Juneau. And so I've enjoyed talking to him about it. He's a wealth of knowledge. If anybody has any questions too, and how it is that they look at our port down in Juneau and what it is he's trying to get done for us, I would highly recommend reaching out to him. Kevin's been working very, very hard on behalf of the Mat-Su Borough. So, and I appreciate that.
Assemblyperson Nowers, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to clarifying question. So with this EDA grant and when the hooks get applied, you're planning to come back to us before moving through that grant enough for the hooks to be in. In other words, we'll have another bite at the apple before we've committed to that funding. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the mayor to the assembly member now, that's correct. I think this is to the level of an assembly decision. This is not something, in my opinion, administration should be making the commitment for, something that's this long-term in nature. I think we will be spending some money to conduct the assessment. It will be less than $100,000, I believe. So you won't see that purchase order. We'll go out and do that, but that'll allow us to bring an assessment back to inform that conversation.
Questions or comments to the manager's report? Ready? Mr. Attorney, do you have a report?
I have nothing for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
The clerk's report with the upcoming meeting schedule and the quasi-judicial report is in your red folders. And also I'd like to request the assembly schedule a special meeting on July 26th at 6 p.m. to certify the July 12th election results. Is this a meeting the assembly would like to schedule?
Is there any objections to scheduling that meeting?
I will be out of town that day, and it may be difficult for me to call in.
I'm thinking the same thing. I'm going to be fishing. Something.
As long as I have 5, I'm okay. It's 2 weeks after the election, like we normally do election certifications. And also, I'd like to apologize to Assemblymember Hale. As soon as you moved to have that resolution moved under introductions, I remembered our conversation. That's the danger of me not having a sticky on my computer.
Any other comments on moving the meeting, July 26th? Okay, I think it's done. All righty, the next item is citizens and other correspondence. Are there any comments on the citizens and other correspondence as presented? Hearing none, they are presented. Madam Clerk, would you read the IMs into the record, please?
IM 22075, reporting the conclusion of contract for bid number 21181B with Rainproof Roofing for a final contract amount of $176,935 for the Dorothy Swanda Jones Administration Building Geographical Information Services Area Roof Replacement Project. IM 22106, advising the Assembly of the manager's signature on a contract addendum number 24 with Glacier View Transportation for ambulance storage for an amount of $3,600 for the period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. IM 22113, informing the Assembly of the manager's signature on a letter of intent and on a grant application under the Rural Energy Pilot Program for the Port Mckenzie Tidal Energy Project.
Are there any comments on the IMs? Okay, hearing none, the IMs are presented. We do not have any requests for persons to be heard. And so now we're going to move to public hearings, and we are going to go to Ordinance 22056. Madam Clerk, would you read it, please?
An ordinance approving a less than fair market value sale of borough-owned property identified as Government Lot 2 and Lot 3 and Parcel 1 and Parcel 2 of Section 1, Township 16 North, Range 3 West, Seward Meridian, for $1 to Alaska SCTP Nonprofit Corporation for the purpose of the development of a youth shooting range and the dual land classification of borough-owned property, identified as tax ID 16N03W01A001, Section 1, Township 16 North, Range 3 West, Seward Meridian, as forest management and general purpose. If you're on the phone and would like to speak to this, press star 3.
Okay, I think we have a staff report. I see staff standing there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Assembly members, borough staff, members of the public. My name is Joe Metzger, and I'm a land management specialist on the Community Development Department here at the borough. I'm here before you tonight to provide a staff report for Ordinance 22056, which is for a less than fair market value sale of borough-owned property to Alaska SCTP Nonprofit Corporation. In addition, there's also land classification attached to the ordinance, which would classify the borough parcel for forest management and general purpose. So to give a little background, roughly over a year ago, I was tasked with evaluating borough-owned property for the potential of a less than fair market value sale to this organization. I put together a property analysis and I presented it before the Assembly, seeking direction on how to proceed. Through Assembly Resolution 21038, which is included in the IM, staff was directed to begin the process of a less than fair market value sale. There was discussion at the Assembly meeting, and some of that discussion also tasked staff to work with representatives of the organization and to identify a property that would meet their needs, and then bring that property back to the Assembly for consideration. So in the last year, that's exactly what we've done. We worked with the organization and identified a 200-acre parcel that is part of a 636-acre borough-owned parcel located off West Carmel Road and located approximately a mile west of Reddington Junior Senior High School. As part of the process, and before the 200 acres could be considered for sale, a subdivision of the larger 636-acre parent parcel was required. The subdivision was completed in February of this year. It took a little longer than we had hoped, but we did get it done in February. Once that subdivision was completed and recorded, staff began the public notice on the less than fair market value sale. This included publication in the Frontiersman, multiple publications in the Frontiersman, posting on the borough website. And a notice was also sent to all landowners within 1/2 mile radius of the proposed sale. Typically, the notice area is 600 feet for less than fair market value sale, but we chose to increase the area due to the potential use of the property. We received a lot of public comment on this. A total of 91 comments were received in response to the public notice. 73 comments were in support, 7 were opposed, and 11 comments we received just had signatures and did not voice opposition or approval. We also received multiple petitions, which were in opposition of the sale. The petitions in opposition contained 136 signatures. All the public comments and petitions are contained within the IM. After the closure of the packet, staff received 2 additional comments, one which was in support and one which was opposed. In addition to a petition that was in support containing, I believe it was 686 signatures. The comments we received after packet closure and that petition should be in your red folder. Alaska SCTP Nonprofit Corporation is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to promoting youth shooting on a competitive and scholastic level through the state of Alaska. The organization qualifies under the provision of MSB 23.05.030 for a less than fair market value sale. Other parts of Title 23 of MSB Code calls for the less than fair market value properties to be sold for a minimum of $500 or range between 50 to 90% of the tax assessed value as determined by the Assembly. Policy also calls for the borough to retain reversionary rights when sold at less than fair market value, wherein the property would revert back to the borough if not developed or used for public purpose. If the Assembly chooses to approve the sale, Alaska SCTP Nonprofit Corporation has requested the land be conveyed for $1. This would require a notwithstanding clause in the ordinance, which is included. This is to authorize the sale of the parcel for $1. Based on the nature of the intended use of the proposed sale, which is a shooting range, a notwithstanding clause to remove the reversionary rights back to the borough is also included in the ordinance in your packet. Ordinance 22056, as I mentioned before, has 2 parts. In addition to the sale, this ordinance also proposes a dual land classification of tax parcel 16 North 03 West A001 as forest management and general purpose. Currently, only 80 acres of the 636 acre parcel are classified. Borough Code indicates that property must be classified to recognize and depict potential suitable uses of the land. Dual land classification would allow the borough to manage land for timber and other forest-related products while allowing for a variety of other potential uses, one of which could be a shooting range. Borough staff respectfully recommends Assembly approve the dual land classification. So as directed by Assembly Resolution 21038, staff was tasked with beginning a process for a less than fair market value sale. That's exactly what we did, and we are here tonight with this sale up for consideration. Typically, in less than fair market value sales, the conveyance includes conditions or deed restrictions. Given the Assembly's recent unanimous decision to remove the permit requirement for outdoor shooting ranges from code, staff did not feel it was our place to add certain restrictions or regulations on the proposed sale. If the Assembly would like to add regulations, please feel free to do so as you see fit and amend the ordinance as necessary. That's all I have for my staff report, but I'm happy to answer questions or provide clarification.
Deputy Mayor?
So through the mayor, did you say there is or is not a reversion clause? Sorry.
Yeah, through the mayor to Assembly Member Sumner. Currently, as the ordinance is written, there's a notwithstanding clause that would remove that reversion back to the borough.
Questions from the Assembly? Yes, Assemblyperson McKee?
Thank you. I'm absolutely in favor of shooting ranges. I spent hours looking for shooting ranges with my sons and never found any, so I'm absolutely on your side. I did have a question. Is this going to be in use like all year round? Even like when school is not in session and such?
So that would be, I think, a good question for the applicant. I believe they'll be speaking tonight, but we will be placing, as it is right now, we have no deed restrictions, so they would have the opportunity to operate year round. In conversations with the organization, this is mostly an after-school activity, as I've been told. Typically like a basketball practice or football practice where it's occurring the few hours after school, and then the children are going back home in time for dinner. I would assume there would, of course, be some events on Saturday and some fundraisers or some tournaments in the future. But right now, there are no restrictions, and they could operate 7 days a week.
Somebody had made, I'd read somewhere that there was a problem with basically the level of noise during the day would disturb the kids in the schools, but if it's not going to be going during, actually, if they thought it would disturb kids in middle school, they've never been in middle school, they wouldn't even hear it. But the thing is would it be available to anybody else during the day? What if adults said, you know what, I'd sure like to go out there and shoot? Could they do that when kids weren't shooting?
So the borough has no restrictions on that. That would be left up to the nonprofit organization on how they would like to run the club.
Okay.
But I think the main focus is primarily for the youth shooting sports in Alaska, specifically in the Mat-Su borough. But in conversations, it seems like there would be some opportunities open to the public or
That'd be
some
good.
tournaments, fundraisers, that type of stuff. But I'm not the best person to
Okay.
speak to on that matter.
All right, thank you.
That's it then. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
You have more staff report or you? Okay. Ready? So I will go ahead and open the public hearing. We do have a sign-up sheet, and I'll call on those people that have signed up, and then we'll open it up to anyone else who wants to testify, as well as we will go online. So the first person is Jim. What do you think? Balgiano. Okay. Would you turn the mic on, sir? Thank you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then state your name, please.
Jim Balgiano.
Thank you.
I've been a resident out here for 26 years, and I'm in support of doing this for help the youth or future of our America. And it's a good way to put the borough tax money, but that's not being used because there's no revenue generated off this land here back to our youth. Some way to help support and do good for the kids.
Thank you. Paxton Crum.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, Madam Mayor. My name is Paxton Crum. I'm 19 years old, and I was an athlete with an Alaska Yes SCTP from ages 11 to 18. I became a member of the Elite Alaska Yes ACY team in 2018, where we traveled to collegiate competitions, shooting on the same fields as athletes from universities across the nation, an invaluable networking opportunity, as you would imagine. Last year, I began coaching the next generation of athletes, many of whom are before you. Last month, I was voted to the Alaska SCTP Board of Directors, and when you vote in our favor this evening, I will serve on the advisory committee to the executive board regarding the shooting park. That is a long way of saying that this program is very important to me, as well as many across the state. Now, Alaska SCTP is a relatively small community. However, we have the backing of the public. In your packet, you will see hundreds upon hundreds of petition signatures in the number 636, I believe. Most of which were collected through a concerted effort of just a few of us over a 2-day period.
Whoa.
Of the many, many dozens of people I asked, a grand total of just 2 people were actively opposed, but even those 2 people were just opposed to the location of the range and not our mission as Alaska SCTP. Speaking of our mission, here is our mission statement straight from the bylaws for the record. Alaska SCTP is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting youth shooting on a competitive and scholastic level throughout the state of Alaska. Our purpose is to provide funds, equipment, training, and guidance to the youth shooting programs of Alaska with the goal of developing self-confidence, self-esteem, self-reliance, respect, personal discipline, responsibility, citizenship, teamwork, and sportsmanship through regular competition at local, state, and national events. Now, here's my question to each and every one of you this evening. Are you really opposed to our mission? And how many of your constituents do you think are opposed to our mission? When you vote tonight, I ask you to trust Neil and Lindy Moss, the two people who have lived and breathed this program since its inception nigh on 2 decades ago, when they tell you that the best way to reach more Matsu students is to provide them with a field that is conveniently located so they may have access to the benefits of this program. Vote yes. Vote yes for youth education in shooting sports. Thank you.
Thank you. Fisher Crum?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, Madam Mayor. My name is Fisher Crum, and I'm 17 years old. I joined Alaska SETP 8 years ago in 2014. I'm currently the senior-most athlete in the States, and that means I have been in the program the longest. I became a member of Alaska Yes ACY team, as my brother mentioned earlier. While in this team, I traveled to Savannah, Georgia, just a few months ago. At this competition, I shot with collegiate level athletes from across the nation. This was an amazing opportunity, and I'm extremely grateful for the ability to travel out of states and do what I love. I know that with the development of this shooting park, many other athletes will have the same opportunities that I was so graciously given. This will be able to expand our program and give so much more kids this opportunity because this range will be more accessible. So tonight, when you vote, please vote yes and help give the next generation the same opportunities afforded to me.
Thank you. Johnny Murdoch?
Good evening. My name is Johnny Murdoch. Some of you remember I retired about 10 years ago after being involved in fire training with the borough for 20 odd years. I don't have any kids. I'm not affiliated with this organization, but I spent much of my life training firefighters. And in the borough with the cadet program and people being able to fight fire at 18, I've trained over 1,000 young people as firefighters. And what I've noticed over the years is that the people coming in the door have fewer and fewer basic competencies. One of them in this state is just how to handle a gun safely, how to be involved and work with other people. We need this. The kids need it. I'm not going to benefit from it. I don't have any kids. But I have seen what they have done with kids. And I really urge that you support and give them the opportunity to do a better job. Thank you.
Let's see. Hopper.
So I'm Jesse Hooper, nearby resident, and also the camp caretaker for the Girl Scout camp. I'm an avid hunter, avid fisher, avid outdoorsman, but I'm not here today really to talk so much about the Girl Scouts. We have someone else here who's going to speak on behalf of thousands of Girl Scouts and what the impact means to that camp. I'm here today just to bring attention to a lake management plan that the Matsu Borough has for 3 Mile Lake in conjunction with the adjacent landowners of 3 Mile Lake. And within that plan, there's an agreed effort to be best stewards of the lake, the flora and the fauna there. There's plenty of letters from other testimonies specifically talking about migratory birds, et cetera, and I would ask you to please look at those. But in terms of the lake management plan in my short time, I just wanted to highlight 3 things that are goals and that have been agreed upon by the adjacent landowners. And the first one is that the recreational opportunities, and I'm quoting, at 3 Mile Lake should be maintained and enhanced, but should not detract from the generally quiet quality of experience at the lake. And that is in conjunction with the wildlife clause and the goal here that the recreational use of the lake should be compatible with wildlife nesting for migratory species, specifically grebes, sandhill cranes. We have swans, we have loons. And I suppose that my question is, are the activities of the proposed shooting range aligned with this lake management plan that the nearby landowners have been stewards of for 20 years, notwithstanding just the Girl Scouts alone, but all of the other property owners nearby? Like I said, I'm a resident. I'm an avid hunter. I fully support a shooting range, but it seems that there may be some additional information needed to ensure that there's no adverse reactions or adverse effects to the lake management plan, specifically the flora and fauna that exists there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Clay Chapman? Go ahead, sir.
My name is Clay Chapman. I am a big game hunter. Most of all, I am a slave to my lord. Places have changed on the assembly, but the facts and science have not changed. Graph on what's at stake here of our quiet community, our perfect quiet community that is a role model for the Mat-Su Valley. They're hard-working, two-income families. And as you can see in the green, we just found out in the green up here, that is a private school that just has been built that will serve over 100 plus students. How they came about this land through Joe Metzger that turned them down a while ago on this 200 acres. Y'all have been deceived and will be deceived as the night goes on. They were not allowed to petition or get this land that would be able to put in a winter camp, a summer camp, and a fall camp for these over 100 private school industry. We have the Girl Scout camp in the pink. Also declares that this is not a residential area. Then you got the dark green as the school. The orange area just describes developers putting a stop to the natural gas and electric down these 48 buyers that will want to build not near a shooting range. I have personally went out in our neighborhood and I got 150.
Oh,
Speaking really loud. I didn't notice.
I got 150 petitions in my area, 100% saying no. As these students said, they went out to gun ranges, sports shows and Three Bears, and did not really tell them, the public, that nobody up here and no adult will come up here and say they will pollute the land, disturb the wetlands, change the wildlife, ruin 3 Mile Lake, which feeds into Fish Creek is our fishery. They will not talk about lead poisoning. You don't see them carrying 10 pounds of lead and throwing it in their fertilizer in their gardens, because these kids and these adults knows it's poison. Look at the paint industry. It's lead. Look at what's happening to our schools. 680 students right now in the Joe Redington area, not counting the 100 from this new school, this private school, not counting the Girl Scouts. I'm here representing as a watchman, telling y'all we got a problem. With these over 1,400 students compared to 50 students, you're going to sacrifice these 1,400 students where they live, their perfect community, quiet community, for something that could be done at Point Mckenzie or KGB. Joe Metzger knows there's lots down KGB, but he doesn't want to tell you that. But he told that to this private school. You can go over here. And they said, no, we want this 200 acres. We don't care what the cost is. That's where our summer camp could go. Thank you for your time. And I'd like to turn in you already got it.
Thank you. Okay, Drake Lewisburg.
Good afternoon, my name is Drake and I am a part of the Susitna shooters team. Having this shooting range built closer to my home would allow me to practice more and save my family money so I can continue to be in the program. Since I've joined, I have learned patience, perseverance, and it has allowed me to step out of my comfort zone, as well as make new friends. Having this shooting range would open the door for other kids in the valley to be able to attend the program too. Please vote yes for the new shooting range.
Addison. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and the Assembly. I just wanted to let you know my name is Addison Strumka. I shot for 3 years with the SCTP program, and I went on to the elite team, and from there received a scholarship for college. A scholarship was really important to me and my family to save money, and my younger sister is also in the program. She looks to follow in my footsteps along with many of these kids here. We have 15 to 20 kids, I believe, on scholarship right now in college. They couldn't be here because they're still attending university and are finishing up their finals week. But I just wanted to come forward and testify that this range would really help other children receive their college education, which is something that I know is really important, especially to people who can't receive that unless they receive a scholarship. Thank you.
Dan Henkel.
Madam Mayor, Assembly members, my name is Dan Hinkle, and I'm a resident of Wasilla. I've known Neil and Lindy Moss for approximately 25 years, and they've been devoting their time to the SCTP program. They've helped a lot of these kids with the shooting program, and I would like to urge the Assembly to go ahead with the sale and allow them to build this range for these kids. Thank you.
Brian Endel.
Hi, I'm Brian Endel, your true conservative candidate for Matanuska-Susitna Assembly District 1. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Manager, members of the Assembly and staff. I want to say that I support this ordinance, and I hope you would too. I've talked to Neil before, or I've listened to Neil, and I've heard the passion that he has for helping these kids. And I would hope that you would vote yes for this ordinance. Thank you.
Weston Crum.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, Madam Mayor. My name is Weston Crum. I am 12 years old, and I've been an athlete with Alaska SCTP since last fall. I am here to ask you all for your support of me and many kids like me from all over the state by voting yes so we can build one of the biggest and best youth training facilities across the nation. Thank you.
Okay, Carl Nevada.
Evening, Mayor. Thank you all for inviting us all here today. I just want to say I'm in favor of this youth program, and your vote would be very much appreciated to help these children. Thank you.
Charlie Eliason.
Howdy. My name is Charlie Eliason, and about 1946, 1947, my dad came up here in the military after serving in Europe in World War II. And he walked around in the area and he found a piece of property where he wanted to live. He wanted to be away from people. He was about sick of people, sick of noise after serving over in Europe. So he ended up settling on 3 Mile Lake and homesteading there. There was another couple that homesteaded on the lake too, and they had spent most of their World War II time in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. My dad did a variety of different things, worked in Jonesville, worked for the railroad, a few other things on and off as he was homesteaded out there on 3 Mile Lake. And about 1957, there was a strange airplane came and landed on the lake. Kind of odd back in those days because it was out in the middle of nowhere. And my dad went over to find out why there was a strange airplane there. And it was a couple ladies had hired an airplane to come look at this other piece of property that was for sale to build a Girl Scout camp. Well, my dad met my mom that day and they got married, shortly within the year. And my mom was the first Girl Scout. She'd come up here from Georgia, and she was the first director of the Girl Scout camp. And I think that was 1957, 58. It kind of is a blur. We had a nice log home there, and unfortunately, we didn't live there full time, but it was old growth timber from the site. And unfortunately, it was incinerated in the Miller's Reach fire in 1996. And the beetles pretty much had taken care of all the rest of the old growth, so we never built anything back. And my dad's original homestead cabin from a little 10 by 12 shack, you can still read from the packing crates, you can still read the addresses from Fort Rich. That survived the fire because there was garden on 3 sides of it, and we still have that. We had sold, or my folks had sold half of the homestead to the Girl Scouts. So when you look at the map, the arrows from the shooting range, they point to our homestead. They point to the 96 acres that we still have, and then the half of the homestead that my folks sold to the Girl Scouts is that other 80 acre slot on the other side. And then the Girl Scouts have the other property on the south side of the lake. I grew up serving the Girl Scouts. That was how I was raised. I still do serve the Girl Scouts on a board because I had 2 daughters that attended the Girl Scout camp. And hell, I attended the Girl Scout camp too when I was 5 or 6 years old because my mom came back to direct again. I think shooting sports are awesome. I loved it. I was on the rifle team in junior high school at Greening Junior High School. And I loved it. I still love to shoot. But I don't think this is the proper location for it. The Girl Scout camp, it's an important spot. The noise is not good.
Kelly Fitzgerald.
Hello, my name is Kelly Fitzgerald. I am the camp director at Camp Togowoods, and I'm here tonight representing over 1,000 girls who use Camp Togowoods year-round, mostly in the summer, but also throughout the year. Girls come with their troops, they stay, they enjoy the peaceful area of camp. Camp Togowoods, parts of it are less than half a mile from the proposed shooting range area. I want you to take a minute and think about how putting a shooting range less than half a mile from a Girl Scout camp and from the following kinds of campers would impact their experience. We have 5-year-old campers, 5-year-olds, just out of kindergarten, who come to camp for the very first time. They spend 3 days away from their parents. They learn to brush their teeth on their own, to sleep through the night without their parent there. How would having a shooting range impact that experience? A 10-year-old kid living in foster care whose parents are incarcerated, learning to build healthy relationships at camp. How would having a shooting range next to camp impact that kid's experience? A 12-year-old camper who's homeless because of domestic violence and living in a shelter. This kid comes to camp and has an opportunity to just be a kid. How would that experience be altered? A 9-year-old camper who who's ready to explore primitive camping for the first time, who heads on her first canoe trip across the lake to the Eliason property, where she's right next to that boundary line of the shooting range. This is where our kids go to explore, to learn to orienteer, to pick strawberries, to watch the clouds, to have an experience to just be together as kids. A 15-year-old who has worked hard to sell enough cookies to earn 4 free weeks of Girl Scout camp, to learn leadership experience and be a role model for the younger kids. Somebody who has grown up through camp, from the time she was a 5-year-old camper all the way to now being a counselor at camp. How would her view of the experience of the future generation of campers be impacted? I want to emphasize that Girl Scouts is not about limiting the opportunities of kids in other ways. We want more opportunities for youth. That is a great thing. We are opposed to those opportunities in the detriment of quality programs that already exist. And putting in a shooting range would be a detriment to the physical, mental, and emotional health of the Camp Toga Woods campers. It would be a detriment to their experience at camp, and they would lose their ability to have the adventure that they get. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Moss.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly and supporting staff. My name is Neil Moss. I'm the president and founder of the Alaska SCTP YES program. I'd like to quote a letter from Thomas Jefferson, who wrote to his nephew in 1785 concerning the benefits of exercise. Encourage all your virtuous dispositions and exercise them whenever an opportunity arises, being assured that they will gain strength by exercise as a limb of the body does, and that exercise will make them habitual. Give about 2 hours every day to exercise, for health must not be sacrificed to learning. A strong body makes the mind strong. As to the species of exercise, I advise the gun. While this gives moderate exercise to the body, it gives boldness, enterprise, and independence to the mind. Games played with the ball and others of that nature are too violent for the body and stamp no character on the mind. Let your gun, therefore, be the constant companion of your walks. Now, I have added live a little bit here. You all have a topo map, I believe, in your packet, and it shows the property. We're not going to be disturbing any wetlands. We're not going to be disturbing any migratory birds. Ask the neighbors that live out there how many moose they've shot on that property, and they still come back and the moose are still there and they're still shooting them. So I don't think that's going to affect anything. You've heard from some of our athletes and our families. If you would like to see what this program is about, our Sporting Clays state champion, or not state championship, but our Sporting Clays championship is this Saturday at Birchwood in Chugiak. In order to come to Birchwood, you need to be a member. So I would like to invite all of you to come as my guest. Maybe you're saying to yourself, well, I would like to do that, but that's too far. I don't have time. Think about that. And I've got one last little thing. Thank you for your support, by the way, but I would like to invite the Girl Scouts to come and try and probably enjoy the shooting sports. Thank you.
Lindy Moss.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly, and staff. My name is Lorinda Moss. I'm the State Administrator of Alaska SCTP Nonprofit Corporation, doing business as Alaska Yes. I'm also the head coach of the elite Alaska Yes ACY varsity team. I would like to stress Real quick, a few important details regarding the proposed shooting facility. This park will be primarily for shotgun sports, archery, outdoor activities, and basic hunter ed classes. Once the park is developed to the point of practical use, it is our intention to open at least once a day on a weekend to the public so that all ages may experience the clay target sports. Monday through Friday, while school is in session, there would be no shooting before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and shooting will be concluded by 8 p.m. Year-round, our program is a year-round activity with competitions from October through June, primarily through the school year. The shot fall from a 12-gauge 7.5 shotgun shell is no more than 250 yards. Shot fall will never leave the boundaries of the park, and that was the reason for having the 200 acres, so that shot fall would never leave the park. There will be sound. Much of the sound will be muted by the trees and the terrain. As our kids can contest to, shooting at Birchwood, they see any number of migratory birds, swans, cranes, eagles, bald eagles, and shooting does not stop them from being on the property. Not to mention the moose and the bears that are in the walkthrough. We are a financially responsible nonprofit. All our tax filings, local, state, and federal compliances are current and in good standing. We just completed an extensive audit, which resulted in an A+ rating. We are accountable to our youth, coaching staff, volunteers, shooting families, and communities. We have a 9-member board of directors. And we have 24 athletes outside right now shooting for their collegiate teams on scholarship, which is a pretty remarkable number. So I ask that you vote yes on this property.
Dana Fry?
Good evening, Assembly. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the youth shooters. And your opportunity is a big one here. Provide them with facility to practice and the continuation of our sport. I'm a big gun advocate and shooting sports person. Just like to say, as our state goes with such things, the University of Fairbanks has members of their team make the Olympic team, you know, every season. We have a large shooting community here, particularly in the Valley, that I believe is underserved with facilities. And to do something good for our youth, we have an opportunity here today to do that. That's all I got to say. I don't have a big dissertation, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that concludes the people that have signed up. Is there anyone else in the audience that hasn't testified that would like to testify? Okay, come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Assembly. I'm Lynn McCabe from Big Lake. I met Neil and Lindy a couple years ago, and over the last few months, I've been getting more informed about what they do. I couldn't believe when I heard that they have 350 to 400 kids involved in 19 different schools. They started this in about 2004, if I remember correctly. And it took 8 years before they could get them into the schools and allow children to begin lettering in shooting sports. And for the last 10 years, they have tried to find a piece of property because all of these youth that are involved in our area have to drive all the way to Birchwood for every practice, for every competition. Just think of all the hours those families have to spend on the road and the expense that they incur traveling to go be involved in this sport. They're very dedicated or they wouldn't spend that kind of money, right? So I just really support what they do, and I ask for a yes vote on the property. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to? Come forth, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Steen. My son is one of the shooters on the shooting team here. I would actually encourage you very much to please vote yes for the property, as well as not only for the benefit that the kids are getting from the different teams and the competition and the other things that are going on, but as well as the training that occurs with the kids, with people, with the firearms and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, I just recently retired after 25 years as a state trooper. I have seen the damage of what happens with kids and with people who are not trained with firearms, who are doing things, and what has occurred with that. And I would greatly encourage you to please support this so that we can continue having educational purposes and educational opportunities for the kids to train them in how to handle firearms and things properly. Thank you again for your time.
Anyone else?
Evening. Real quick, I just wanted to say a lot of the shooting and the safety with firearms has been addressed, but one of the most important things, I have 2 kids on the teams, is their ability, their respect for other people, their respect for the firearms. But one of the things that Lindy has told me about the kids being on the team is that she expects certain behavior. They are taught to be respectful. They are taught to be responsible. And I think their opportunities are just as important as the Girl Scouts. Like, they should not be deprived, any of them. So anyway, I'm encouraging a vote of yes. Thank you.
Can you state your name for the
Cheryl
record?
Bentler from Palmer. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Shafer, and I wasn't planning on talking today, but I thought that I could kind of bring a unique mindset because I have been a competitive shooter, not out of this program, but out of programs in Fairbanks, Valdez. I've shot in Anchorage and Toke, and I just absolutely love the program. And I think that a big part of this is community, and I don't think that people realize the community that shooting sports brings out of people. It is really awesome to have kids who might not be, good at school or they're not athletic, but this is something that they can do, they can thrive in. They have a community that is not what you would get from just regular school sports. There's a lot of moral values that come into play when you're handling a firearm, and that is highly respected in these sports. And it is something that I personally believe that everybody should have a chance to just gain these values with firearms. And I'm just slowly learning about and witnessing this program, and I can very much relate it to my own back home. And it is an absolute beautiful thing. And I think that the growth of this is really important. And I would highly suggest for you to vote yes. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to testify? Yes.
Hello, my name is Russell Grandel. Thank you, Mayor and the Assembly here. I am the coach for the Palmer team. I've had 4 of my own kids go through the program. I've seen excellent results from the program. Safety issues for handling guns. I feel safe around these kids, more safe than I do a lot of adults. We shoot at Birchwood. Some of those adults at Birchwood that come through get nervous, but these kids here, I feel absolutely safe with them. So it's a great program. The camaraderie, not between teams, but between other teams is great. I've seen students and teammates interact through people throughout the state, through Juneau, Ketchikan, and Toke. So there's a connection there that they all make together. If you ever go to any of these meets, there is just a friendliness towards everybody. They get together, they play together, they shoot together. And the sport gets them out of the house instead of playing computer games, gets them out in the open, understands what real life is, what real guns are. I hope you'd vote yes for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Williamson. I live in Wasilla, and I have a son who shoots on this program. I wanted to thank each of you for the opportunity here to speak about it. I'm here today to ask for an affirmative vote, not just for this property, but for these kids. This community, hands down, has always stepped up for its athletes. We build swimming pools and soccer fields and football fields, but these kids do not have a place out here in our community that they can practice their sport, and they deserve it. These kids are some of the most respectful kids I have ever met, and I know there is concern about sharing this acreage with the Girl Scouts and lakes. And I want to say that you've heard a lot about Birchwood. These kids pick up after themselves. They pick up their shells. They care about their environment. They leave it clean when they leave. It's better than when they got there. They share it with birds and moose and bear. And if you've never been to Birchwood, in order to get there, you'll find a whole residential area that you drive through. These people all share this space, and they have since I was a kid and my dad shot there. So I just am hoping that you guys will vote yes for these kids, for this property, and for their future. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have one person online. All right. So person online would go ahead, please.
I don't think this is the right spot. I don't want to comment on the shooting range. I was just trying to do a public comment.
Okay, all righty. That will be later on under audience participation. So we do still, there is another person. Okay.
Hello, my name is Dave Musgrave, and I oppose this ordinance. As the residents, there's 136 people, signatures that have opposed this. I suspect that most of those are residents right around the area. We already heard from several people that the noise involved with this is not much, and that it'd be mitigated by trees and other forest between residents and the shooting range. Let me tell you, I live about 1 mile from the grouse range shooting range. When it was in operation, it sounded like a damned war out here. It was disturbing. Fortunately, they did have hours of operation, which mitigated some of the things. But what you're doing by giving this parcel away for a shooting range is you're creating hell for the residents around there. They will be listening to a full-time war. It'll go off on, they won't have a choice of when it happens. And if their property values will go down. They're concerned about stray bullets, which I don't think that's a real big issue here. But I think the noise levels and the lead abatement are a real issue. I think you should be very careful. This is not the right place or the right time for this shooting range, and you should not destroy people's lives, their financial future, and their peace of mind by putting this shooting range in here. I ask you to think of the residents in the area. I suspect that none of the people that are testifying for this live within a 1 mile radius of the shooting range. So it just goes to show that what you're doing is you're trading the values of one residence for somebody that's coming in there, hasn't been there. You've got Girl Scouts there, you've got several schools. This is the wrong place and the wrong time for this shooting place. Please oppose this. Thank you.
Caleb, do we have anybody else on line? No. Okay, so I'll bring it back to, I'm sorry, sir. Oh, give it to the clerk, please. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, thank you. Anyone else that hasn't testified that would like to testify? And again, no new people, okay? So With that, I will close the public hearing. And Assembly Person 2,
I move to adopt ordinance 22-056.
okay, is there any discussion? Assembly Person Hale, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first, I'd just like to thank all the youth athletes that came out here tonight. I know it's not exciting or even particularly interesting sitting there in the audience listening to us all talk about this, but your presence is noted. We didn't have this kind of program when I was growing up in Valdez about 30 years ago. We didn't have this kind of program. I wish we did. I actually worked at the local, the Valdez Trap Club. And so every Wednesday I would go out and I would load the machines and I would pull the trap and keep the score. And I'd get to shoot a little bit free. You know, the Trap Club would provide the ammo, and I worked for tips. And if I'd been able to shoot competitively and maybe get some scholarships and stuff, I think that would have been a fantastic opportunity. As far as some of the concerns that have been raised tonight, I think, you know, the Girl Scouts and the SCTP can definitely get together and, you know, kind of go over, hash out kind of some kind of agreement between the two organizations to kind of address some of these concerns. I do think it's kind of ironic that until very recently, the borough did have a shooting range ordinance that would have made basically all of those concerns, would have addressed all of those concerns with noise and lead abatement and everything like that. But unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. But I do think this is a fantastic program, and I think it's about time you guys had a home.
Assembly Person Yount.
Thanks for the presentation to the staff, and I want to thank the staff for putting together this map. So I don't know if everybody picked one up on the way in, but I hope you did so you can follow along. So 40 acres squared is 1,320 feet by 1,320 feet. So you'll see in these red blocks, there is 5 of them. And just so you have some perspective, again, any one of these red lines on the side is 1,320 lineal feet. As noted by the map here, it's 1,633 feet to the eastern line, 3,357 to the corner of the property, 4,786 to where the Girl Scouts sleep. But I want to add in a few more lineal footages here that I've been scaling out. These are not engineer accurate, but I assure you they're very close. We're about from the, well, that'd be the southeasternmost tip of where the firing line could be in a straight line to the lake. We all play on lakes out here. I don't think anybody wants to see any lakes damaged. So I wanted to point out that's about 4,000 lineal feet, and it's not in the direction of any shots fired with the plan that was submitted. Another thing that I would like to point out is in the direction of the shot towards the wetlands. It's approximately, let's see what I have here, 1,500 lineal feet. It is true that in the legislation that was just repealed that we did have a lead abatement plan. The reason I don't think the Matsu Borough needs a lead abatement plan is because there's this little group funded by the feds called the EPA that has one that's substantially more strict than ours. I cannot imagine for the life of me that a nonprofit would exist very long if they were not holding up to the terms and the regulations that the EPA will put forth. It is concerned, I love what the Girl Scouts do. Maybe they didn't realize these distances. I wanted to point them out and mention a couple of other things. I'd like to quiz Mrs. McCabe. I didn't know she was here. She is correct. The school district, I've been coaching in the school district for 18 years now, and I can assure you it gets more difficult every 2 to 3 years to remain a wrestling coach or any kind of coach. I cannot imagine the amount of I's you have to dot and T's you have to cross to get a shooting program approved by the school district. It did happen on April 19th of 2012, though, and you may not know this, but the school board member that brought that forward was a really short guy named Mike Dunleavy. So to be in good standing with the Matsu Borough School District tells me a lot of things right there. I wanted to touch on the lake distance. I wanted to touch on the wetlands distance. Mention that the EPA will be watching. I do not see how it's physically possible for any lead to get anywhere near the wetlands. But, you guys should hire an engineer and prove that. You maybe already did, but it is, it could arise, right? It could arise. So I would dot your I's and cross your T's when it comes to that. I heard Mrs. Moss mention hours of operation. So, it is a concern to the neighbors, and I think it's a very strong common sense concern to worry about hours. The neat thing is when you're shooting during the school year, you pretty much got it. Mother Nature gives them to us. Alaska provides darkness, and we're not going to be shooting during that. But I would hope that this program continues year round, and that there's a lot of shooting in the summer. And I do think we should discuss some potential hours operation tonight. I'm not proposing an amendment right now, but it might be something worth considering, just to protect the neighbors from. I know you guys wouldn't. I'm not saying you would, but just to put it on paper. But I'm in full support of this. The last time we met about this, I said my only regret with it was that it wasn't in downtown Wasilla, because that's my district. So that's all I got.
Assemblyperson McKee?
Yeah, one of the ladies that was speaking was talking about the shooting range at Birchwood, and I have shot there. And I was and saying that the neighbors had not a problem with it, and I've never heard that there's a problem with it. I surely wish that somebody from that area were there tonight to confirm that, because I'm sure that it is so. They coexist peacefully, and I don't know. I expect that this would be the same. So I don't think that the folks that are really concerned about the noise level are. I think it's going to be okay, but I just think if Birchwood can do it, you guys can do it.
Yeah. Assemblyperson Bennett.
I'd like to thank you all for coming out, and I'd like to thank Neil for doing what he's doing. And I believe with this range here, he's going to be able to get more youth involved in the sport, and hopefully someday we'll have one in District 7. Thank you.
Assemblyperson Nowers.
Yeah, thank you. Just some comments, first, thank you for coming out. I've heard you're the most respectful, well-behaved group of kids, so you got some high standards to live up to. I hope you guys are like that all the time. I think it's a terrific program, obviously. Teaching gun safety, teaching responsibility. Have not heard anything negative about the program, and obviously Mr. Moss and Mrs. Moss have worked really hard to put this together along with other folks. I will say I live next to a shooting range. It's mostly an indoor one. I also live on a lake, probably about a half mile from it. It does have an outdoor component. And so these concerns like noise, it can be an issue. We hear it. If it was going round the clock, would it be a bigger issue for us? Yeah. So, I kind of echo some of what's being said up here. If there's hours that you can kind of agree to up front, that lets the neighbors settle a little better at night. You can work with the Girl Scouts to kind of find maybe avoid some key days, or you stopping at 8. Does that work? I just know from my own personal experience here it's the Valley. We're going to hear gunshots, and hearing an occasional gunshot does not disturb me, nor does it seem to disturb the wildlife on our lake. But again, if it was all the time, it might be, a different deal. The other concern about lead being a serious concern, there are EPA rules on that. They're not always able to enforce that all the time, but this club seems to have a real concern about safety and how you do things right. And it can become a liability if you don't take care of it correctly. So it's a little bit of a leap of faith or trust, but like your ability to manage that for your own self-interest and for the community. I'm hopeful on that. And I do think, I don't want to pit kids against kids. My kids went to the Girl Scout camp. I know exactly what you're talking about. And that ability to go out and enjoy nature and the quiet, there's a real benefit to that. I think this can be a win-win for kids. I think the kids from Girl Scouts maybe could end up you could have a shooting component to that. Could we do that? Could that be a win-win? I just hope that this is something that could come back and be a shining example and to kind of put that burden on you guys too, like make it work with the neighbors, come back and show how it can be done, because these kind of issues come before us and people, then there are bad examples that are out there that, that went wrong, and it makes it tougher to do this in the future. So I just wanted to echo some of those comments. And if there are hours that are acceptable that folks want to put forward tonight, that may be something to consider. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment, sir?
Yeah, so I think I heard 400 kids in the program, 20 or so scholarships. I mean, that sounds like a really great program. I think that there's nowhere you could put this that's going to be absolutely perfect, but this is about as good as you can get as far as location. I look around at the map here, and it's like Native Corporation, Mental Health Trust land, the closest what looks like single family homes are probably going to be over a quarter mile away. So I think this is a good thing. I think we should do it. And yeah, I'm just thank you, Neil Moss and your wife, for doing so much for the community. Thanks. Oh, and I call the question.
Okay, the question has been called. Is there any objection to calling the question? Oh, and is there any objection to the motion? The adoption of the ordinance? So, hearing no objection, then the legislation passed. And the next item then are the other public hearings, but why don't we go ahead and take a 10-minute break now, and let the record show that Assembly Person Ron arrived at 6:02. We'll go back to the beginning part of the public hearings that we skipped. So, Madam Clerk, would you read the first public hearing, please?
Ordinance 22049, an ordinance accepting and appropriating $300 revenue from the sale of external hard drives of aerial imagery LiDAR data from the Aerial Imagery Acquisition Program with accompanying resolution 22039, a resolution approving the scope of work and budget for the Aerial Imagery Acquisition Program.
Okay, and I see there must be a staff report, or did you come up here to buy yourself pizza or something, or I guess it's a staff report, huh?
Pizza would be more fun, honestly. Madam Mayor, members of the Assembly, Eric Wyatt, Director of IT here at the Borough. Aerial imagery and LiDAR, I'm sure you're all familiar with that program that we've got going on here. You've used this on our parcel viewer. This information is available to the public online, but if some organizations want all of the imagery, all of the LiDAR data, and that's far too large for them to download. So we make hard drives available that have all of the imagery, all of the LiDAR on that, and the public can come and purchase this from us, but really it's not a purchase. They just reimburse us for the price of the materials. So we buy external hard drives, we load all the imagery and LiDAR on there, and there are organizations that will come and get that and then reimburse us for that. So what this represents is just the hard drives that have been reimbursed for us, is taking that revenue and putting it back into the project so that we can use it again later to continue on with the program. So that's what this ordinance is about, and we just need to accept the money and put it back in the project. So if there are any questions?
Guess not. Thank
Okay.
you, sir. So I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that, we don't have a sign-up sheet, right? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to testify on ordinance 22-049? We have anybody online, Caleb? No. Okay. Seeing no one testify, then I'm going to close the public hearing. And Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-049 and resolution 22-039.
Is there any discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 2250, an ordinance accepting and appropriating additional disaster relief funds from the 2018 November Cook Inlet earthquake with a resolution 22041, a resolution amending the budget for additional disaster relief funds for the 2018 November Cook Inlet earthquake.
We have staff. Hi.
Through the mayor to the assembly. The borough previously was awarded $293,000 on this project worksheet for fire department and fire building repairs. But the final cost estimate or final costs came in an additional $8,913.50 was determined to be payable to the borough. This legislation accepts and appropriate that final amount.
Okay. Questions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to testify regarding ordinance 22-050? Caleb, do we have anybody online? No? Okay. Your last chance. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22-050 and resolution 22-041.
Discussion by the Assembly. Any objection? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 22052, an ordinance authorizing the manager to sign all documents necessary to transfer any and all interest the borough has for platted right-of-way located within Section 19, Township 26 North, Range 4 West, Seward Meridian, identified as Tracts 8, 8A, and 12A and 12B to the Alaska State Department of Transportation and Public Facilities to meet Federal Aviation Administration grant assurances in accordance with an Alaska State Department of Transportation and Federal Aviation Administration grant agreement for Talkeetna Airport right-of-way acquisition.
Staff, sir, go ahead.
Terry Dolan, Director of Public Works.
The Alaska Department of Transportation obtains federal grants to support construction and operation at the Talkeetna Airport. And those grants typically require full site control and unity of ownership. An example might be they receive grants to install fencing for security, just as an example. And so in order to comply with these terms of the grant agreements, DOT is acquiring borough-owned right-of-way inside of the airport. And that's the purpose of this.
Okay, questions? No? Okay, thank you, sir. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 22-052. Anyone that would like to testify? Do we have anybody online, sir? No, thank you. So I will close the public hearing. Assemblyperson Vernier.
I move to adopt ordinance 22-052.
Is there discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 22055, an ordinance accepting and appropriating additional grant funding in the amount of $132,000 from the Alaska State Division of Forestry to operate collection sites and dispose of dead slash from beetle-killed trees for the Mat-Su residents with company resolution 22042, a resolution approving the extended performance period and revised budget for the Alaska State Division of Forestry grant to operate collection sites and dispose of dead slash from beetle-killed trees for Mat-Su residents.
Okay, is there a staff report, sir?
Terry Dolan, Director of Public Works. This state grant assists us in operating our collection sites for beetle-killed spruce and forest slash. It helps reduce the fire danger out there for our residents.
Questions, staff? Okay, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to testify on ordinance 22-055? Caleb, do we have anybody online? Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor?
I move to adopt ordinance 22055 and resolution 22042.
Discussion, assembly discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing no objection, the legislation passes. Okay, and we've taken care of the next one that's on the agenda, right? So we're now up to audience participation. Okay, yeah, I guess you're right, he's not. The next item on our agenda is audience participation. Anyone is welcome to address the assembly on any subject for 3 minutes. And so I'll open audience participation. Anyone like to address the assembly? We do have one person. Okay. Thank you, Caleb. Go ahead. Online, please.
Hello, my name is Ben Rayevsky, Raevsky. I'm speaking to you because I have two concerns: the Fishhook to Pittman Power Line project and the recent election of the restated bylaws by Matanuska Electric Association. I discovered some problems with the MEA's proposed bylaw changes while researching how to bring the deficiencies to the Fishhook to Pittman Power Improvement Project to the attention of the Board of Directors at MEA. I found my answers in the 2020 bylaws, but as I was researching, I found that the bylaws were being restated for 2022. I looked at the restated bylaws and was shocked to find that they were not restated bylaws, but that bylaws had been deleted, changed, and materially altered. By definition, this is an amendment. These amendments remove members' rights and increase the Board of Directors' powers, which went against what the members gave them permission to do in the 2022 vote, asking them to look at the bylaws. I felt that the membership was misled into approving the bylaws changes without a thorough review because they were called restated bylaws on the 22 ballot. Restated meaning present in their entirety. Examples of bylaws that were removed without any explanation include the Board of Directors' term limits were increased from 3 to 4 years. The indemnification of board members from litigation was strengthened. They removed non-for-profit limits on how the board members get paid. The board of directors will select and fill board member seats if there's a sudden vacancy instead of the position being filled by the members. The number of board member votes needed to remove a director from the board has been changed from the majority vote of from a majority vote to a 2/3 majority vote. This increases the required number of votes needed to unseat a board member from 4 to 5 out of 7. made the requirement for board of directors to submit an annual conflict of interest disclosure to be optional, stating that they may require them to submit them. Moved requirements for audio recordings to be kept to the board meetings, and the board member is no longer required to provide dissemination of board-approved information to the members with balanced presentation of the pros and cons concerning the matters of cost generation, distribution, and electric power by the cooperative. This process was in clear violation of the bylaws at that time. Because MEA did not provide an explanation of the changes at the time of the election, this violation was clearly evident in MEA bylaw Article 3, Section 8.3. The member owners, by delegating authority to the board of the directors, do not give the board the right to decide what is good for members to know and what is not good for members to know. The board did get permission from the members to adjust the bylaws. But those permissions were to adjust the at-large director's terms, reduce the time it takes for a board member candidate to withdraw from an election, provide additional reasons for a director to remove another board of director, and clarify procedures for members to submit a bylaw. There was an advisory vote so that the board could make the bylaws more readable and understandable, but while retaining the unique needs and character of the cooperative. I have more, but I thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else online, Caleb? Okay, one last chance for anyone here to participate in audience participation. Okay, seeing no one, then I'll close audience participation. And we're at the consent agenda. I know we did pull some items. Do I ask if there's anything further to pull? Okay, is there anything further to pull? No, everybody's fine. Okay, Madam Clerk, lead us through the changes, please.
Resolution 22046, a joint resolution of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough and the Anchorage Municipal Assembly in support of House Bill 350 to end the school bond debt reimbursement moratorium. AM 22037, approval of contract amendment number 1 to contract number 21131P with Lounsbury and Associates Incorporated in the amount of $15,960 to design Caswell Creek Fish Passage at Hidden Hills Road to add additional service for Phase 1 archaeological survey. AM 22038, authorizing the borough manager to enter into a contract addendum number 3 with the city of Palmer in the amount of $555,906 for fire protection services for the contract period of July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2024 for fiscal years 2023. AM 22039, awarded bid number 22126B to Northern Asphalt Construction Incorporated in the contract amount of $492,443 to improve Emsweiler Drive and Sunday Drive. AM 22040, awarded bid number 22123B to Valley General Construction LLC in the contract amount of $778,653 to improve East Wolverine Avenue, East Porcupine Avenue, and East Beaver Avenue.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Madam Mayor, sorry, I hadn't noticed this before, but I might have a conflict of interest. I own property on East, I think it's East Beaver Avenue. So I'd ask for a recusal.
Okay. On the east, on AM 22-040, is that the one, sir?
I suppose I'd move to take up AM 22040 separately.
Okay. Is there objections to his motion? No. Okay, so we will take that one up separately. And then the clerk tells me that there was one more she needs to
I
read.
apologize, I missed one. AM 22036, authorizing the borough manager to enter into an agreement with Delta Medical LLC and an annual contract amount of $15,000 for emergency medical services in the Lake Louise area for a contract period July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2027.
Now, should we take up the one that the deputy mayor wanted to take up separately first?
I would take
or-
the rest of them first, and then we
Okay.
can take up AM 22040 separately.
Okay, all right. Deputy Mayor, will you move the ones then that have been read except for?
I move to approve the consent agenda as read into the record by the clerk with the exception of AM 22040.
Okay. Is there discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, then the consent agenda is read by the clerk, except for AM 22-040 has been approved. Okay, now we will consider AM 22-040. And Deputy Mayor?
Madam Mayor, I'd ask to be recused because I own property on East Beaver Avenue, which
Okay.
would benefit from improvement.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion regarding AM 22-040?
I move to adopt AM 22-040.
Okay, it's been moved that we adopt AM 22-040. Discussion by the Assembly. Any objections to the motion? Okay, so that legislation then is passed. And so, yes, thank you, Assemblyperson Yount. Okay, so now we take up the ones that
Yeah.
pulled. Okay.
First one is Resolution 22045, a resolution requesting that the Alaska State Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development Division of Community and Regional Affairs enter a community development block grant disaster recovery subrecipient agreement with the Cook Inlet Housing Authority on behalf of the borough for the proposed low to moderate income housing developments in the borough, pulled by Assembly Member McKee.
Okay, so Assemblymember McKee, you want to move and then speak to why you wanted it pulled?
Tell me the move words I'm supposed to say. I move to adopt resolution 22045.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, now you speak to.
Yeah, I just have some questions. I noticed that usually these things, I recognize the people who have sponsored them. Who is P. Graham on the IM?
Through the mayor to Ms. McKee, that's Pam Graham. She works in our finance department. So they originate the legislation. That does not necessarily mean that they sponsor it. So when you see that, I'm the sponsor for that legislation.
Okay. Then the questions that I had, apparently what's left to the borough is $2,868,600. And I was just, something that kind of worries me, it's talking about what sounds like a rather large expansion of low to moderate income housing. Does anybody know where it's going to be, when it's going to be, who's eligible? I noticed there's a lot of, expediting the Indian Alaska Native Housing Authority, IHA Cook Inlet Housing Authority Affordable Housing Program. Is this like open to everybody kind of thing, or does this have any specialty for Alaska Native housing, or how's that work?
Go ahead, staff.
Through the mayor to Assemblymember McKee. I'm not sure that I can answer exactly that question. This money was funneled down to the state as part of the CARES money. It's specifically for low income housing. The borough does not have that power. Anchorage worked with the state and Cook Inlet Housing to have them administer this program. And so we were approached and asked if we would allow them to help administer our money too, because we do, like I said, we do not have that power to administer this program, and Cook Inlet is set up to do that.
And so since they are, what say do we have and where it will be? And I mean, we don't have any zoning here, so it could be in my backyard, which I wouldn't be particularly happy about, but how do we know what we're getting?
And that I can't answer.
Yikes.
I'm sorry. Because I'm not even sure if it's for building housing. Like I said, this is money that came through the state to assist with low-income housing.
So since it's not like set in concrete, when this comes up, should it be, we're going to put in a 42-unit housing in your backyard kind of thing, then the people in that particular area are going to be able to have something to say about that, since we don't have zoning? Is this other group going to just say, here's where it's going to be and here's how it goes?
Again, I don't have that answer. Like I said, we were just asked to funnel the money to them because they know how to run this program. And I don't even know, I'm not even sure if they're actually putting up housing with this program or if they're doing rental assistance with this program.
Through the mayor to Ms. McKee. So if we had a development, it would go through our planning process or any other process as any other development might.
Okay.
So what we're doing here is there's a grant opportunity to funnel federal funds into the borough. So we partner as a municipality with an entity that can actually execute the funding. Otherwise, the funding doesn't come to the borough and it will go to another municipality. So because we don't have those housing powers or staff to administer that, we partner with Cook Inlet Housing as Anchorage has done, and basically are a pass-through for the funding so that they can take advantage of that.
And so if when this goes through, or when, assuming that it will, we do still have something to say about where, when, how? No? Not? Yikes. Okay.
Okay, further discussion. Now, Assemblyperson.
Sorry, and I
Morris?
apologize for this, but I appreciate you bringing it up. So I understand it's going through Cook Inlet Housing. I did have the sort of the same question along Ms. McKee's question. Is it open to everyone? Because or is it like a specific program? Because I guess I would appreciate the clarity on if the housing they provide is just for everybody. It sounds like maybe we can't get an answer on that tonight. Or maybe Mr. Yunt knows the answer and
Okay,
we can solve
or
it
the
tonight.
deputy mayor, we have you both.
CHA, Cook Inlet Housing Authority, is the state's largest tax credit developer. I've built and developed tax credit deals in the past, partnered with a firm out of Idaho. I can't bond or guarantor a tax credit development. I don't have the balance sheet to do it, so I had to partner with a firm from out of state, like I said. But CHA is the largest developer in the state. They do a great job, in my opinion. They're very, very, very professional. But no, their housing is not typically open to anybody. It's usually based on either a 40%, 50%, or 60% threshold of the median income. So they're LIHTC projects, which stands for Low Income Housing Tax Credit. They're beautiful though, and they're everywhere. They're all over in Anchorage. There's quite a few of them out here, and they are honestly, in my opinion, the nicest housing developments in the state of Alaska. So I can say that. I know that much about it. So not open to everybody, and they are, without question, I believe, the nicest housing projects in the state.
Deputy mayor? Oh, I'm sorry.
And
Go
then
ahead.
through the mayor to Ms. McKee, so it is a federal grant, so it's going to come with criteria and stipulations. So they're going to have to adhere to that. If you don't want to adhere to that, then we don't accept the grant and the funding goes elsewhere. Is that not correct?
To correct the manager, this resolution requests to get directed to them. We're not going to be in the chain.
Correct, right, but we have to be in the pass-through, is my point.
We're not in the pass-through. This resolution will direct it to them. That's what this says.
Okay.
It's low-income housing money available to the citizens of the Mat-Su Borough. We have a local government that does not have the power to do low-income housing. Therefore, we're requesting it go to the authority that does have the power to do it, which is this entity. And no one else, to my knowledge, does it.
I think what was being asked is if we don't vote to approve this, it will not get passed along to CHA. Right? It would disappear, go back to the feds. I'm not really sure how that would work, but it would not positively affect our community. So I do hope that we support this. And these are amazing questions by Ms. McKee also. And that's, I do appreciate your concern. And that's why I thought I would give you at least a little bit of knowledge that I have, having built some of these in the past and watched Cook Inlet Housing build multiple. Like I said, they're the largest tax credit developer in the state. And they do a darn fine job, in my opinion. So,
Deputy mayor?
Yeah, so I think these low-income housing grants are competitively awarded by the money that is block granted to the state of Alaska. So if we don't do, I mean, there's not really a reason not to do it other than what I'll say after this. But if we don't do it, then it's just going to be somewhere else in the state. Rob's right. They do overbuild the things because they're subsidized. They are actually pretty nice and they're for low-income housing. That said, they don't pay property tax and they compete with the private industry. So if you guys want to vote this down, I'm more than willing to, but there really isn't a good reason to do that. So.
Yes, go ahead.
may I please add
Yeah.
one more thing?
Yeah.
I don't know the private sector could compete with this because most of the people living in these communities probably could not afford what's considered market rate. So if you don't have tax credits when you build something, that means you're building something market rate. And you're not going to subsidize. If you have to fund all the money yourself, it's very expensive to build, you're not going to subsidize it. So I don't think private sector can compete with these in any other way than to actually get these tax credits themselves. And they are competitively awarded. It's a very, very, very difficult process to get Alaska Housing Finance Corporation to award you these. I sat on the board for Alaska Housing Finance previous to this. I stepped down once I was elected here because it was too much work to help with both. But I will tell you, it's competitively awarded. And I, as a private sector person, can tell you without tax credits, I could never compete with this. It would be, you just couldn't do it. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I don't know if this helps or not, Assemblyperson McKee, but I know the ones that they built in Palmer were all single family. There wasn't any, 42 units or anything like that. And they built in, like Palmer has zoning, so they built in the area where it was single family zoning. And like they said, they're very nice houses. That was 10, 12 years ago when they did that. So go ahead, Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just think that this is an important program that the federal government provides to help working folks who might not otherwise be able to afford their homes. So let's go ahead and get it done.
Okay, further discussion.
You just turned off your mic. Can you turn it back
Pardon?
on? Thank you.
Green is go.
Thank you.
Since we don't have zoning, that scares me. And my one question about was when I understand they're going to moderate to low income families, but there's no kind of ethnic, just because it goes through a native corporation, there's no ethnicity, there's preference or anything like that. Because that's would
There
not.
wasn't, there wasn't for the city of Palmer. I don't know, maybe the deputy mayor or, Assemblyperson Yacht.
Not on the ones that I did were senior housing. You guys have some of them in Palmer as well. Those are larger complexes, typically the senior housing ones, because they got to have elevators in them, typically. But no, not in my experience with those. There are other types of programs out there that I believe some of the Alaska Native companies have built housing projects that were specific to their tribes or whatnot. But I don't believe any of this is that, in my opinion. So not that I'm aware of. So typically tax credit, it's just based on income, if that makes sense. So.
Further discussion. Is there any objection to the passing of, Deputy Mayor? Oh, there is objection. Okay. All right. So I guess, Madam Clerk, then we will need to vote.
If I can get everybody in the room to vote, please. It passed with Assemblymember Sumner and McKee opposed.
Okay. The next item of business, Madam Clerk, when you get finished.
Resolution 22051, a resolution in support of the Ukraine Relief Program by the New Chance Incorporated to relocate Ukrainian refugees to Alaska and welcoming those displaced to our community, pulled by Assemblymember McKee.
Go ahead, Assemblyperson McKee.
Let me look here.
I move resolution
Yeah.
22.
I move resolution 22-051.
And now you can move it and now
Okay.
speak to it.
I just had questions because I'm certainly all for the Ukrainians and that. Do we have any idea of the numbers? I had another question that was even more interesting though. That one wasn't very interesting anyway. The one I had in mind is, what if they win? What if they win over there? Oh, we might not even be having
That's
this
a bigger
discussion.
global.
I mean, maybe we will.
Answer than I can come up with. Maybe somebody else around here has one.
And then I was thinking, what does the community think? Do we have, do we know where these large numbers, I mean, because, and I have nothing against any ethnicity. I'm Irish, my kids are Hispanic, and my husband is whatever he is, but, so it's not that, it's just that, well, what do our people think about that? Shouldn't our community have something to say about when, where, how many?
That's why they elected you.
Well,
You are the community.
I am, but
Yep.
I have a difficulty voting for or against something when I don't have much information. Maybe we should
Okay,
put this
well,
off a little
the
bit.
sponsor of the legislation has his hand up. Let's listen to him.
Okay.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
So I brought this forward, request of some folks that are working with New Chance Incorporated, which is affiliated with the Anchorage Church. And they're running this Ukrainian relief program to try to bring over, they said approximately 200 families for here, Anchorage, and where else did they say?
Kenai? Are they doing Kenai?
No, not
Okay.
Kenai. No, well, not important, but it'll probably come to me. But anyhow, this resolution doesn't do anything other than give them something to help present their case to INS and customs and whatnot in order to get these folks actually admitted. Something like 4.9 million Ukrainians, last I'd heard, and I'm sure it's more now, have fled the country out of a population of 44 million. So it's a pretty substantial humanitarian crisis. And we're not, I mean, I'd fully support putting 200,000 of them in Dee's backyard, but that's not really what we're talking about here. So, I think these folks, they'll come over. They've got a lot of support network with the church and this organization. They're going to try to find them jobs and housing, and they've got that lined up. I believe my parents even volunteered their apartment for a family, and I know a lot of other folks have been coming forward to help out on this, and I think it's a good thing that we should do. And it really is nothing that other than just us saying that we support it. So I'd ask people to vote for it.
Assemblyperson Yuan? Comment?
Yeah, Jesse's a lot more involved in this and knows more than me, but here's what I know so far is I believe the first 200 will only score enough points to be considered, or however it works, I'm not exactly sure, but if they already currently have family here. So that way, when they get here, they're not a burden on our already limited housing supply. Beyond that, I think there's the potential for up to 400 more. We already have a large Ukrainian and Russian population in our community, which I think is great because they're arguably the most productive people in the entire community, in my opinion. But yeah, the first wave, I know they have to have relatives here, I believe, in housing already lined up. My staff and I are working with them to try to help provide housing for the next waves, to help out for 6 months or a year or whatever we can do for some. But yeah, it's a bad deal. You brought up the point, what happens if they win? They're going to win. They're going to win. And I mean, the truth always prevails. And so I don't imagine they're sending over men that are me and Tim and Jesse's age, right? I think these are going to be some of their weakest citizens, and the strongest will probably remain at home. But for now, and I do hope that eventually they can return back home to a nice, safe environment. But what I know right now is the first wave of 200 has to already have housing lined up. So, and they will hopefully be here in the next 2 weeks or so, I hope.
Okay, Assemblyperson Hale, did you have?
So we're not building a 42 unit condo on KGB for low-income housing Ukrainians then.
It's down Fairview Loop behind her house.
all jokes aside, I want to thank the sponsor for bringing this. This is really, I mean, we're not doing much, but we're expressing the local government support in order to help this organization get the things that they need to get these folks out of there. And I thank Jesse for bringing this to us.
Assemblyperson Hours?
I just also wanted to thank the sponsor. This is just a horrible thing to watch these people have a completely functioning society and watch their homes get bombed. And I know it's kind of late and it's not our purview in the assembly, but it's something that's affecting our whole world. And folks who have been around and seen the Cold War, et cetera, know that this can spin. So I just really appreciate this coming forward. And I hope they'll have a home to go back to. And this will just be temporary. And I don't know, the Ukrainian Russians being the hardest working, you might get the Germans and the Spaniards all upset by sort of saying that. But anyways, now we're getting late. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Let me just finish up. I can't pick up a gun and go over there because if I could, I would do that. I think what's happening over there just breaks everyone's heart. So my questions are certainly not anti anything like that. I was just kind of asking some questions of how it would impact the community, which I think questions like that need to be asked. But you know what? If they all have to come to my house, I got a big house, I got a big pasture, they're welcome. I just want you to understand that I support these people.
Further discussion? I'm sorry, Assemblyperson Bernier.
I just want to thank you too, Jess. That's very honorable. Prayers to Ukraine.
Any objections to passing Resolution 22-051? Hearing no objection, that legislation is passed. Madam Clerk?
AM 22035 awarded bid number 22089C to Swickard, Alaska 2 LLC in the contract amount of $200,880 to purchase command vehicles for the Department of Emergency Services. This was pulled by Assemblymember McKee.
Okay. No, go ahead and move it.
I move to adopt, hold on, what is it? AM 22035.
Okay. And you have questions, do you?
I do. First of all, my first question is, what do you do with all those old vehicles?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Assembly members and staff. Ken Barkley, Director of Emergency Services. So what we do is these are replacing our frontline vehicles, and then they move to the reserve status. So the vehicles that we're purchasing now are going to be the front line for response. After we go through the mileage, maintenance history, a safety report on them. If they fail any of those, then they go into what we can call our admin staff vehicles. So these will be the frontline vehicles is what they'll be replacing. And it's 5 of them. We got through purchasing through Sourcewell program. They're getting them at $40,000 a piece, which is unheard of right now. So we're going to try to jump on this now while the pricing is extremely low. And that's with our special vehicles that we order because ours come with a different suspension, electrical package and alternators and different safety systems for our vehicles.
So that price I was looking at 51.9 is actually 40,000?
50.
I was looking at the Tahoes and it's talking.
200,000.
Yeah, but I was looking at the Alaska Sales and Services saying that a fleet 2022 Chevrolet Tahoe, blah, 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 is at 51.9, but you're actually saying we're getting them for 40,000?
I got the exact amount here, 40,176.
Yikes. Good deal. All right, thank you very much.
Assemblyperson Hale?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering if you guys are getting trucks for $40,000. Can you order me one while you're at it?
I think the attorney will agree with you when he saw that as well. So, thank you.
And Mr. Attorney is collecting the names, is he? Further discussion? Any objections to passing the resolution? Hearing no objection, the resolution is passed. Madam Clerk, let's see.
One more.
Okay.
AM 22041, approval of increase in time extension for contract number 21045C with P&D Engineers for the Port Mckenzie Damage Repair Construction Management Services Project. This was pulled by Assemblymember McKee.
Yeah. you need
Am I
to be
on?
Yeah.
I'd like to just forget about that after the manager's report answered a lot of my questions.
Just need to move it and then we can.
Okay, I move to adopt 22041.
Is there any discussion? Any objection? Legislation passes. Okay, and now you're ready for introductions, but we have one back also from the introduction, right? One resolution.
Introduction for public hearing on May 17th, Resolution 22044, Ordinance 22051, Ordinance 22053, Ordinance 22054, Ordinance 22058, Ordinance 22059 with accompanying Resolution 22047, Ordinance 2260 with accompanying Resolution 22048, Ordinance 22061 with accompanying Resolution 2250, and Ordinance 22062.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
I move to introduce the legislation as read into the record by the clerk and set the public hearings for May 17th, 2022.
Is there a discussion? Is there any objection? Hearing none, the legislation is introduced. Okay, vacancy report, Deputy Mayor?
I move to confirm the mayor's recommendations as follows. Library Board, Joanna Walsh. Road Service Area Task Force 2022. Resignations of Gerard Billinger and Mark Fish. Appointment of Jedediah Cox and Stephen Edwards.
Is there a discussion? Is there objection? Hearing none, then the agency report is approved. There's no new business, there are no referrals. And Madam Clerk, would you read the reconsideration into the record, please?
Ordinance 22036, an ordinance approving the less than fair market value sale of borough-owned real property identified as the Peggy Lake Residential Camp to the Anchorage Community YMCA.
Assemblyperson McKee, do you have a motion to reconsider?
I do have a motion to reconsider, yes.
Okay.
Just have to move it.
Oh, so you have to move it. So move ordinance 22-036 for reconsideration.
I move, would you call that? Oh,
Ordinance
22036.
22036.
For reconsideration?
Mhm.
Okay.
Right. Discussion on the reconsideration.
Oh, that part. Thank you.
Discussion on the reconsideration. Is there any objection to reconsidering? Okay, hearing no objection, the legislation is reconsidered. We are now on the main motion again, and the legislation is open for discussion, amendment, questions, comments, discussion regarding ordinance 22-036. Yes, go ahead, Assemblyperson McKee.
I actually took a trip by there the other day to just check and see what it was all about. And I was no more than, I don't know, less than a quarter mile in when I saw cameras and no trespassing signs. And I didn't really see big dogs, but anyway, that thought was there. You couldn't go any further. So I thought, how does anybody get access to any part of this lake? And it doesn't appear that you do. So when we came back, I sent my attack dog out to kind of go and find out some information on this. And it kind of, I guess my main thing I'd like to do is put it off a little bit so we can look at some more stuff, because the things that I did discover concern me sufficiently that I think we need more time to look at them. The YMCA, Anchorage YMCA, owns 160 acres that are immediately contiguous to the 130 acres that they're asking to get sold to for less than fair market value. And I don't have any information on what that's used for or anything else. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but it looks to me like they're going to pretty much surround the lake by the time this thing is done. The 160 acres immediately north, it's labeled YMCA Family Camp Road. Whoever we talked to in land management said that the access road follows a public easement, but it really doesn't. The map provided by the land management folks shows the road only follows the easement for a very short distance. Then it travels across a 160-acre parcel mentioned above. There's no access to it due to the fact that there's this really huge metal gate blocking any any access to it. On page 3 of the ordinance, section 3.1 states, in the event the property herein described is no longer used for charitable and public use. I don't know how public use fits in there if you can't even get down the road. State Department of Fish and Game at public expense stocks this lake. I'd really love to have a private lake that nobody else could get into and that the Fish and Game would come and stock it for me, but that's probably not going to be likely, especially at the price of about $130,000. If you can give me lakefront property at $1,000 a shot, I'm in. They also said that the appraisal report was 11/18/2021 for vacant land only. The most valuable land, I would assume, would be where the residence is, right along the lakefront there, but it appears from that language that that's not being evaluated. That's not being, what would you call it, assessed. How close is the appraisal to what the borough assesses it? Is this a new appraisal that they've got in the one in November? Did that raise the valuation of that? My property went like 35% or 40% up. Is this stuck in the old evaluation or assessment value? Or does it really now have a higher value here in May? Not a heck of a lot more. One thing that bothered me, page 3 of the ordinance says that the Anchorage Community YMCA serves the Anchorage community. And when the representatives were here and I was saying, well, so could basically somebody else go in if they wanted to, it was kind of mushy. I don't really remember what the response was, but it kind of bugs me that we would have a municipality of Anchorage come out here and get this pretty valuable looking land, and then we can't even use it. It just rubbed me the wrong way. I also looked at another Friend Lake and Silver Lake, and on Silver Lake, I went because it's right adjacent to it. There there are probably many, but I looked at one Airbnb there, which is really has excellent reviews because basically you're on a private lake out in the middle of nowhere. So I just thought there were so many questions associated with this that I'd like to look and see more at what we're getting, because we did since I've been on the Assembly, there's been the Meadow Lakes thing with the gravel pit, there's been the shooting range, and all of these things we're just like, come on in and take your pick. And it kind of concerns me. Maybe it shouldn't, but it just seems like this needs a little closer look, my opinion.
Is that a motion to postpone, and do you want to postpone to a specific date?
I think that would be good, and I would like to wait until after the budget frenzy is finished.
Okay, maybe you can ask clerk what meetings that you might have an option for to bring it back.
The second meeting in June is June 21st, or you can go earlier on in June 7th. I'll leave that up to you. So June 7th or June 21st.
I'd like June 7th because then I can have more of my summer all in one spot.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
Tracy will speak to that. We don't.
Madam Mayor, Manager, the Assembly, as staff, I will be on vacation the first meeting in June. So if we could do it to the second meeting in June, that would be very helpful.
Does the maker of the motion have any objection to that, to moving the postponement until the 21st? Okay, I have all kinds of hands here. Assemblyperson Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the mayor, is there any time-sensitive component to this transfer?
Through the mayor, Assemblymember Hell, I just got the memo tonight. I really need to digest it and take a look at it. A lot of it has to do with valuation that really isn't part of the lease document. It's for the land only. We don't own the buildings. So, I need to really go through it.
I think the lease expires in July of 2023, so there's no urgency. And people just want to go out and fish this summer rather than consider this thing okay, but because it is
Yeah,
a year
just
away.
specifically to the motion to postpone, I was wondering if there was any time sensitiveness to this, so.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner. I don't know if that's a promotion or demotion.
I was just going
Go
to
ahead,
say in
please.
regard to the postponement, I too believe we need some time. I don't want to put too much on the staff. There's a lot of really good questions in here that you asked, and I think in all fairness for the staff, they should probably have a little more time to help dig up those answers. July, I think we only take one meeting, so it doesn't sound like June or July might be a good idea. I'm proposing either August or October, as long as it's not September, because that's moose season, so.
October is good.
Okay, I guess we need to stay on hers. The clerk's probably going to get mad at me, but I think, what's the best way to go about this? Either she changes hers to an October meeting or we vote hers down.
You can move to strike 6/21 and insert a new meeting date.
Just a minute, Assemblyperson Yount has the floor, okay?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to pass it back to Ms. McKee so she could strike that and change it.
Oh, okay,
herself.
so you want her to go ahead and come up with okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Okay, Commissioner, doing the same thing, I don't know why is it
Oh, right.
Commissioner, what am I on?
I'm
Anyway,
thinking October moose hunting season is over,
October
school
4th
has
or
started, the
18th.
weather's dark.
October 4th or 18th are the meeting dates in October.
I'm like an 18th. Yeah.
okay. Okay, and Assemblyperson Nowers, do you still have a comment?
I do. I just had, if we just could get input from staff. I know if I have projects, like sometimes stringing it out really long is not good. Is there any staff objection or concerns about going all the way to October versus June? Does it make any difference for you?
No, that would be fine. I think we can.
And Deputy Mayor, do you have comments?
I was just going to say, sometimes there's financing considerations where fee simple title might be more advantageous than a leasehold, but I don't know specifically that's the case here. But also I'd point out that it's the Anchorage YMCA, and I think there is a YMCA out here now, so some people might consider that.
Assemblyperson
Just one comment.
Nowers?
I did sort of ask staff about that a little bit, and it sounds, I mean, there is a Matsu, but it sounds like the Matsu folks take advantage of the Anchorage one. But since we're pushing this to October, those are all questions we can delve into.
Further discussion for on the motion to postpone until October 18th. Assemblyperson Yount.
I'm not saying we should do this, but it's something to consider. If we have a Matsu YMCA, maybe we should, and we got plenty of time to figure it out, but maybe we look at leasing it to them and they can create a joint venture agreement with the Anchorage YMCA. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just something to consider, joint venture.
Okay, so the motion is to postpone. Further discussion on the motion to postpone. Any objections to the motion to postpone? Seeing none, then the legislation is postponed until that time. So I'm sorry, did you? Sure.
Through the mayor to the assembly, if you have any additional questions or things that you would like staff to come prepared on October 18th outside of what Ms. McKee provided in her memo, I would request you get that to us in advance so that we can come prepared. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay, all righty. Mr. Attorney, final comment? What? I'm sorry. No, okay. Assemblyperson McKee, final comments on anything?
Yeah, it's not midnight and I'm real glad about that.
Assemblyperson two, no. No. Assemblyperson Manere, final comments.
Plant your corn early.
Borough Manager, final comments.
Through the mayor, I just want to say thanks to Joe Metzger and our land management team. The youth shooting range, that was like a year-long process and hours of staff time went into that. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thanks. I think they did a really nice job with that.
Madam Clerk?
I just wanted to point out to the members that I didn't get a chance to talk to. I handed out the green first packet for tomorrow for the budget amendments. This is what I have so far. If I end up with more budget amendments, I'll hand out a new booklet tomorrow.
Okay, Assemblyperson Yon?
Thanks again for everybody that was willing to allow us to move the meeting from Thursday tomorrow until tomorrow so I could coach. On Thursday, I'm looking forward to adopting the budget tomorrow with no amendments and be out of here in about a half hour. No, not really. I have a feeling we'll be back together next week, but yeah, the budget as it's proposed is, and I said this today at the Wasilla Chamber, the budget that staff and team have put together, if that was what we adopted, it would actually be a really good budget that I feel like the taxpayers would be very proud of. And so, I mean, obviously, we all know that there will be amendments and tweaks, but I just wanted to take a second to say thank you to the staff for bringing forth something that's, pretty awesome to begin with already. So thank you.
Assemblyperson Nowers?
Also, thanks to the staff for all the work that's gone into the budget. One thing that'll help us get out earlier tomorrow, I think, is if other people have amendments, if they get them into the clerk and get them to us early so we can take a look at them. I just wanted to mention this weekend is if you're interested in aviation at all, it's the Great Aviation Gathering at the Alaska State Fair in the Palmer grounds. Thousands of people showed up last year. They're going to have a forestry tanker. It's going to use the big scoop bucket and then hopefully dump it on the golf course there and not on some other place that they don't mean to. But that's pretty cool, pretty amazing to watch. They're raffling like these amazing stove tents that Alaska Airframes is donating. They're like $2,000 tents that are super cool, and it's free. And there's also, you can, just a business success story, Alaska Airframes, you can go in, stop in and see that operation. They have turned that from a 4-person, $100,000 company to a $22 million, 100+ person company that's actually doing manufacturing here in Alaska. They talked about it at the chamber. He's actually importing rubber from Georgia, raw rubber, and turning that into the Tundra tires. And he's doing it despite all the hurdles to businesses in Alaska with the energy costs, et cetera. And he could make more bucks doing it elsewhere, but he's chosen to do it in Alaska. So anyways, if you like planes and you're interested in aviation, that's a great opportunity this weekend, the 7th and the 8th.
And what time and where?
7th and the 8th at the Palmer Airport and the Alaska State Fairgrounds, and the bucket drop happens both days at noon.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
So the manager asked for some direction on information for this Peggy Lake thing. I would like some solid reasons why it shouldn't go to the Matsu YMCA, or I am definitely going to amend this. So being as we have a local YMCA, I think that what Rob said, we can lease it to them and put them in the driver's seat, and they can make arrangements with the Anchorage YMCA, and maybe it will help them also get off the ground. But that being said, look forward to the budget hearing tomorrow, or budget meeting tomorrow. I also think that we have a pretty good budget. Looks like there's some amendments. Might be a few more, but yeah, so it should be fun. Thanks.
Okay. One thing you got, I think, in your red folder is this. And I talked to the clerk, and she may want to add, but this has not been advertised as a public meeting for the assembly. So you probably need to check in with the clerk if you plan on going, because this organization has money requested in our budget. So it is something you will be voting on. So it's best that we do not have more than a couple people show up at one time. So
Maybe in your orange folder, Assemblymember Hill.
yes.
I do plan on attending.
That's 2 more that can go.
I'll go if nobody else does, but I'll wait to see. I'll be the backup. So, okay. And we do not have an executive session. And so if there's no objection, we will adjourn at 9:14.
Jesse, you were a minute.